Hydrofield cuts through my neighborhood.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Fearlessly Authentic. I'm your host, Lucky. Steve's disembodied voice isn't here yet, but we have a really awesome guest with us tonight. We have Exulansic. Did I say your name right?
Yeah, that was great.
I like jumble up words all the time. So, it's ridiculous. It's like my dyslexia comes out of my mouth, like it literally verbally comes out that way. So, I'm really excited to have you here with us tonight, or with me until Steve gets back. But can you tell everyone a little bit about whatever it is that you are willing to share about yourself and what you do and all of that good stuff?
Sure. Yeah. My day job is speech language pathologist. So I work with a lot of patients with a lot of different kinds of problems, broadly working on areas. You can read our scope of practice if you want to see all the things that we might be doing. And that can be found on Google, speech language pathology scope of practice. And in my spare time, for the last couple of years, I've been making videos where I've been attempting to document in pursuit of oh, what happened to my camera? Am I still okay? Sorry about that.
Yeah, you're still here.
Where I've been working on a project to document as many medical nightmare stories as I can find. And react to them and kind of talk about things like how much they cost, what the side effects were, what the complications were, and broadly, like why the complications were very predictable, and therefore why, in my opinion, a good surgeon wouldn't do this to somebody. And so therefore you get bad surgeons in this field. And so that compounds the problem. And I've also been trying to look at individual doctors that I've come across, and various angles of that, and implications for women's rights, and the rights of parents and the rights of children. I've been just cranking out videos to document the research that I do in pursuit of that. And I've met a lot of very interesting people, and have a lot of stories now of my time turfing.
So did you take on that title turf? That was it given to you? Because everyone that I've talked to, that's they'll say I'm a turf or whatever now, and they're like, well, it was put on me. They called me this so many times that I just adopted the term. Is that what happened with you, or did you do?
That's exactly what happened. I mean, it's a word that began its life as a slur. The person that coined it said she doesn't like people that she calls turfs. It's not something that anybody made up and unironically calls themselves that. And most of us find out what it means the first time we get called it for something innocuous. So I was called a turf the first time for saying that men and women have different heart attack symptoms. You're just not allowed. That's profane knowledge. You're not allowed to know that anymore. You have to pretend that we don't have different heart attack symptoms. Well, people are going to die if we pretend that. I'm not going to pretend something that's going to cause people to die.
Mine was being told when I said that men can't have babies. Like men don't have babies. Like
there's a primal wound.
I didn't realize that it was such a controversial topic, to say that men don't have babies. I thought we had that just established throughout all of time.
No, not anymore. Now we have seahorse dads.
I know.
Now we have people publishing articles saying, you know what, it's a pretty heteronormative to not cause birth defects.
I say to Steve all the time, my partner, I say to him, I'm like, this is just insane. It just feels like on the surface level, so people that haven't really dived in and really started to digest and really you haven't been called a TERF, if you haven't been called a transphobe, like, 1,000 times, and you haven't been called a bigot, and all, if you haven't been called all those things and you haven't gone down all the rabbit holes, that when it comes to this, then you might not realize how deep it goes, because there's like, there is so many like people looking at this, like the average person from the outside, the people that repeat the same things, like we know the talking points because we hear them all the time, like, oh, well, it's just a social gender's a social construct, and like
people don't know what that means. They just say that. They don't like English. The English language is a social construct, but it's also a very intrinsic part of you that you can lose. So I like to ask them, okay, gender is a social construct, but and they'll also say it develops by age 3. So it's like, okay, you're saying it's a socially constructed entity that develops by a particular age. Things that develop have a biological component because that's what development means. And so does that mean that if a child is developmentally delayed, that the development of gender will happen later? And then the part 2 of that is, if it's something that developed, does that mean if you get a brain injury, you can lose your gender? And what would that look like?
Yeah, that's true.
Their heads explode. They get really mad because there's no like church approved response to that. And they don't want to blaspheme, but they also know that it's a reasonable question. So they just get really mad and try to intimidate you out of continuing to ask it.
It's insane when you ask a reasonable question and their reaction is just like, oh,
I want to use a science word. Let's talk about it.
It's so crazy. I feel like it's it's very predictable. You can be very predictable with how the conversations are going to happen, and like you can kind of see like where they start to go with things, whether they go to immediately to it's a social construct, or why do you care about this so much? Why do you spend so much time caring about this? Why do you care about women's rights and kids? It's right. Like, why don't you? There's 1,000 ways that they have to poke the hole in it, but their arguments don't stand. I mean, how many genders are we up to? Like at this point, do you know? Like
it depends on what group you're talking to.
Okay.
So some of them think that there's some kind of a gender spectrum, and so there's an infinite number of gradations between the genders. And what people believe that there's like a fixed number, like 70. Some people believe that there's only the 2 genders, and like that would be like the classic interpretation. Some people believe there's 3. It's whatever you want. They really see gender as like color, and so they see it as like it's spectrum, and you can go in all these different ways.
And there's no like consensus with most of it. Like it's like you can meet one person who's who's transgender, and they'll tell you like a whole list of things, and then you'll talk to another person that is, and it's a whole different list of things, and some of it will overlap. There's like some commonalities between the two, but like they'll it's like you don't even know what you're gonna get. Like it's really a surprise every time. Like I feel like, because like they'll go off into like they'll start to tell you that like, oh well, that means that you must be a right winger. I get called that all the time, or that I'm moving to the right because I'm talking about these issues, and I'm like, no, this isn't like a political leaning side for me. I'm nonpartisan in this. I'm more of a lefty, but like I'm nonpartisan. Like I'm like, screw these systems. They're not working for us. I want new systems. So I don't participate in those systems. You know what I mean? So I'm like, this doesn't make me a right winger by covering this. It doesn't make me a right winger by reacting to the documentary Matt Walsh did, What is a Woman? Like that doesn't make me a right winger. Having an analysis, having an opinion that I might share, that they might reflect some of the opinion that I carry, that doesn't automatically make me politically into some different category. Do you get that same like backlash from people?
Yeah, I mean, I the number of times I get called right wing lately. It's like I have a stereotypically lefty degree from a stereotypically lefty university.
I know.
I am a bleary-eyed hippie. Like I'm not. I don't know if I'm conservative in some way or right wings in some way, then it's because the plane is upside down.
Yeah, right.
Like,
Something's wrong here.
yeah.
I know. It's like I smell a patchouli, like I'm not,
People
I'm
still ask me
definitely
what I'm going to be doing with my women's and gender studies degree. It's like I don't know. Maybe someday something will come along.
So can you talk about like what you did at school and like how was your experience? Because you went to school in California, right?
Yeah, I went to UC Berkeley. It was interesting. I kind of felt like I had a pretty normal experience until 2009, and then I don't know when the first time they turned CERN on, but something changed. I was supposed to originally graduate in 2009, but then there was an economic crash, and I ended up staying a couple extra years, and that was like the year I got exposed to gender theory, and all my friends were involved in that at that point, and it's just people started cutting pieces off themselves and like taking drugs, and it just kind of got weird. It was nice to then move on and go to a different school after that.
Yeah, I can imagine. Did you get tied up with all of that with the, with transitioning and all of that? And like how did that fit in at a woman's, you know what I mean? At such a like, like I guess I want to know like where does the cross sectionality happen where women who are, doing women's studies are transitioning to the opposite gender? Like how does that like I mean, I guess you can kind of say that's probably like where the social contagion part happens and like
Yeah, very
that
much so.
part of it.
People got really invested in the idea, and partly this was Judith Butler's doing, and she was not in the gender women studies department, but for some reason she had a profound influence. But the idea is that you are the purpose of the field is to try to explain why women are in the situation we're in and the predicament we're in. And some people come to the conclusion that women and men, or they start from the premise, I should say, that women and men are the same. And so any difference that ends up in the surface form is imposed or constructed in some way. I obviously don't share that opinion. Women are women and men are men. We're not a flavor of men. We're not men that have been mistreated in some way and become women that way. We actually started different and continue being different, and then we will die different. And that's okay.
Yeah.
The fact that we resemble each other as a species is not a sign that we're similar. It is a sign that we have evolved to look similar. But plenty of species, the males look very different from the females. And even in our species, the males and the females look somewhat different. So how similarly the males and females look is a function of a lot of factors, but ultimately it's an illusion. And we can't embrace the idea that we're the same just because we look the same. It's just not how it works. We're biologically different throughout our entire bodies.
Yeah, like down to like our very molecules. Like it's, I mean, and that doesn't happen. It's not like we come out of our, our mother's womb and we're like, oh, the doctor decides, oh, well, this one's going to be a girl, or I've had too many boys in a row. Like this one's got, you know what I mean? Like
Yeah,
they don't decide that. They're not assigning your birth. It's not assigned at birth.
Right.
Like that just drives me crazy. Like conception decides when you are conceived before, you know what I mean? Before your parents even know if anything's even happening, even if you have IVF before that. You know what I mean? Like
you could have some slight weirdness happening if you have there's two concepts. One is called chimerism, and that's where two embryos fuse when they're still pluripotent before they've differentiated. And the other one is called mosaicism, and that's where one embryo that starts from a zygote and it's dividing, where some of the cell lines in that embryo change in some way to have a different genetic history. So you can get people who have Down syndrome, for instance, only on part of their body. and they didn't have Down syndrome at conception, but they had Down syndrome through mosaicism during embryonic development before they sex differentiated and before their body plan differentiated. So you could conceivably have somebody that ends up as a chimera or as someone with mosaicism chromosomally, where they're not technically the sex that they were when they were conceived. But for the most part, yeah, no, you're right. It's definitely something that is exclusively genetically determined in the warm-blooded creatures called humans, one way or another. When it's genetically determined, it's really early.
So yeah, a lot of people go into the XX or the XY, and we know that there's intersex people as well. And I'm friends with a couple people who are intersex. So I think it's really interesting that, they always get thrown into the mix of the transgender ideology. Mm-hmm. And they get used as a shield. And, they've spoken out that they don't like it, but mm-hmm. yet they're continually used as as some kind of barrier as to why, why kids should be able to have, surgeries or, they use them in a way that they don't actually approve of. I don't, none of the people that I know approve mm-hmm. of kids having any kind of, surgery before.
Yeah. And a lot of it is stemming from the fact that, and I've done videos, Dr. Safer, for instance, my video response to him, he did a whole presentation on this. A lot of the gender ideology is actually rooted in attempts to figure out how to clinically manage these disorders of sexual development. And one of the motivations there was that not wanting to accidentally produce a homosexual. So they wanted to, that was part of the big import of figuring out what sex they were and connecting sex to sexual orientation.
Oh, wow. So they were trying.
Because it was illegal.
It was to erase the gay away, basically.
Yeah, that not wanting to legally put someone in a situation where it would be a criminal act for them to pursue romance. And then also allowing them to get married based on how they looked and felt, even if they were, in point of fact, the other sex. And this idea that it wouldn't be fair to force them to live as a male just simply because they're male. So there's a very complicated intertwined history there.
Wow.
And yeah, it is, I can understand why they're concerned, because there is a, their rights are at stake, but some of their rights may also, maybe we need to have a conversation. So it's unfortunate that we're in this situation.
Yeah, it feels so. Steve has joined us. Steve, you want to say hi?
Hey, everybody.
I didn't want him to start talking, just scare the shit out of you.
Where's that voice coming from?
I know. So, I mean, there's people identifying as different animals now too. I mean, these, it's beyond just having, whether or not there's, between 60 to 100 and something genders now they're identifying as animals. And
because if you don't have to be female to be a woman, why should you have to be human to be a woman? Why should you have to be an adult to be a woman?
And then how does their rights work? You know what I mean? If you believe you're an animal, animals don't have the same rights that people do.
Right.
It just it all seems like it's getting even more complicated. I don't even know.
And how do women? How is women's right to vote protected if women isn't connected to sex, and if sex is being constructed as something that's not really a real thing, something we made up? Because the 19th Amendment explicitly refers to our right to vote being protected on the basis of our sex. So if we get rid of the idea of sex in law, what is actually protecting the rights of people who have uteruses to vote?
I know. Then they have to call us birthing people. I don't.
Yeah, birthing people don't have rights. Women have rights. Right. Female people have rights.
It just it feels very. The whole thing just feels very Orwellian. We are going backwards in time. we're not moving forward. Like, I feel like we skipped a whole lot. We skipped the time where it doesn't matter as long as you have clothing on, just wear clothing that's decent and don't expose yourself to kids. Like, we skipped that, you know what I mean? Just acceptance, like wear whatever you want. Right. And like, we moved past that acceptance and we went to this like complete extreme. And it feels like we're in a new phase of like lobotomies and like the Salem witch trial all at once.
Right.
You know, because if you wrong think, if you are thinking outside the box, if you're not repeating what the echo chamber, what the group think is, then you are like, you know, you're called a TERF or a transphobe, and you are hung in the public square. It feels just it feels absolutely like, you know, and I look and I talk to my neighbors and I talk to people out in the world, and I'm like, they aren't even like really aware of most of what's happening. Like,
they're not.
And it's like, except for when, you know, they have the transgender people at the White House shaking their boobs on the White House lawn.
Oh, that was lovely. I wonder exactly how much MDMA was involved in that decision to do that.
Right. Oh my gosh. I mean, who thinks that? Like, who's like, oh, well, let me just pull them out.
People who are in an altered state think that that's a good idea. Yeah. No one else.
Are we sure it was cocaine that was found at the White House? Maybe
no.
It really wasn't.
Pixar, it didn't happen.
It was just a rave in the basement. Everybody was high on Molly. It's fine. Come on, guys.
Like, I know. I think that the marmot and the CERN really, you know, something happened. Like, something happened.
He
thinks it was like a weasel.
That's what it is.
It was definitely the weasel. You know, they're sneaky little fuckers.
Pauly Shore had nothing to do with this.
It wasn't Pauly Shore. So what is like, how do you deal with all the people that come at you, like the haters, when they come at you and they're like, oh, well, why are you obsessed with this? It's like, what is your response? Because I've gotten to the point where, like, I don't care if they call me a TERF, like, call me a TERF, call me TERF. I don't care. Like, it doesn't bother me anymore because it's overused and it's not true. And I know it's not true. Or they'll try to like misgender me and be like, oh, well, okay, sir. And I'm like, you know, it doesn't bother me because I know who I am. Like, I've never been misgendered. Like in real life.
Yeah, it's funny when they try to like misgender me out of spite to hurt my feelings.
Yeah.
Like, I really have very complex feelings in response to that, because I'm like, I wanted this so badly at one point in my life and it never happened. And now it happens all the time because you know that it's not what I want, which means you know what sex I am. So am I supposed to be mad? I'm just kind of confused.
I know it's definitely a confusing time. It feels like everything is, you know what I mean? You just don't know. You don't know what you're going to get. You don't know, like, if you're going to have a super reactionary person or if you're going to have like the person that has a family member that has somebody that's trans. And like, so on the surface level, they just see it and they hear the things. They, you know what I mean? They're like, oh yeah, born, you know, they say born in the wrong body. They say, you know, oh, they just doesn't, their brain doesn't match their physical body. You know, and it's always the same things. And it feels to me like they're erasing the tomboys. They're the femboys. Like they're taking us out. Like, I would have been a prime target if I was growing up in this right now. I would have been a prime target for this. I was the little girl who was outside. I was in nature, dirty, you know, like acorn fights with the boys and just rough and tumble and mud and
dirty acorn fights with the boys.
But then, you know, I was also very like fluid with it, and you know, I liked girl things that were, you know, stereotypically girl things, you know, because I just was like, I don't care what these what the social construct is, that I'm not supposed to do this or that because I'm a girl. Fuck that. That makes me want to do it more. Don't tell me I can't. Like, yep. I'm just stubborn. So like it like pushes me towards doing that as opposed to like scaring me away from it. And I've always just never fit in the typical, you know, the gender norms. Now, did you grow up that same way?
I was a strange kid, definitely. I was not typical. I had a weird fear that people wouldn't know I was a girl if my hair was too short. I don't know where that fear came from, but I refused to let them cut my hair until I was in like 8th grade. In retrospect, I might have just not liked haircuts and made up a story for why it wasn't time for the haircut yet.
You never know.
But then, yeah, I also had a lot of anxiety that people would think that I couldn't do this or that because of the fact that I was female. And yeah, and I was in serious denial about the fact that, especially once I hit middle school and, you know, the boys are starting to really catch up and surpass us developmentally. I think it's hard for women and girls to come to terms with the size and strength disadvantage that we have as females.
Yeah, and it comes on and it's quick, right?
Not,
like
not
for us, we're like,
delude yourself that if you just tried harder, if you just worked out more often, you'd catch up.
Yeah, no, we're not. That's that time where, you know, I don't think people talk about puberty enough. I feel like they don't talk about how awkward it is and it's weird. And like, you know, there's an ugly duckling stage for a lot of people. Like you just look at pictures of them and you can go, wow, yeah, that was that was not a good time period for you. But you like blossom after, like, you know, like it's
yeah.
I feel like that's human right.
Assuming they don't mess with your puberty, because what was I looking at? Some study on it was they gave rats testosterone because the rats had gender dysphoria or something, and it made their mid face like grow differently. So like it's if you roid out a teenager, it can end up with characteristic facial anomalies. So if you think about facial anomalies that are associated with things like Down syndrome or fetal alcohol syndrome, we might eventually come to terms with the fact that, oh shoot, now people who went through the puberty suppression and cross-sex hormones, they have very, very specific faces. They're recognizable as trans people for that way.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Like a physical.
You have different numbers of receptors, different levels of blood supply in different parts of your face. So it doesn't all grow evenly the way it did when you were a fetus and you were much smaller.
Yeah. Yeah. It's very true. So can you talk a little bit about like the different, like, you know, the hormone aspect of everything? Like when it comes to like, I know you did a video recently that I was just like thrown away. I was like thrown back by, like, because you're talking about the Lupron and like the Depo-Vara shot and how like that's the similar. And I don't think that women realize that that's like, you know, that's they have the similar characteristics and similar problems.
Yeah, I had no idea. Like, I was shocked because you think that when you take those kind of drugs that it's somehow only acting on the part of your body that you want it to act on, but they don't explain to you that the Depo-Provera shot actually is acting on your hypothalamus in your brain and causing it to stop communicating or communicate differently rather with another part of your brain, and then that causes a difference in that your brain's communication with your gonads, and it's only when you get that far downstream through these successive steps that it actually will stop ovulation and reduce the production of other hormones too.
So you get that? Is that the one that you get in the arm? Is that
the Depo shot? I don't know if they give it to your arm. It's an intramuscular shot that you get every 3 months.
Okay, I never had that shot.
I always got it in my hip, so yeah.
Oh, okay, yeah, I never got the shot. I only took like the they gave me as a teenager, they put me on birth control, but before I was like, you know, sexually active, because I had cysts on my ovaries, and so they gave me those to kind of like help out and balance it out. And I mean, it
has a lot of valid medical uses. I'm not somebody who's saying never take these drugs, never ever do that. It's always worse than if you didn't take them. I'm not saying that. For some people, that is the best of all possible worlds. but it should be based on a physical theory of what's actually happening in your body, not based on you thinking that you'll emotionally feel better if you are more like a man in some way. Like we need to acknowledge women and girls' pain and the fact that is physical and severe oftentimes, and have a real conversation about that instead of saying like, well, you can just say these magic words if you want to try this, and we don't have to talk about why you're in so much pain.
Yeah, and I can't imagine like people that go on it and then go off of it, and then it's like it's mind-blowing to me that it's easier in a country where we don't have a universal healthcare system in the United States. Like that's just, we just don't have that. And it's easier for a parent to go and get gender affirming care at a clinic in a state that they live in that doesn't have Medicaid or Medicare. I always get them confused. Like one of the state-based, insurances. Like, so there's not
is Medicaid.
Medicaid. Okay. Mm-hmm. So yeah, if there's no, they can't have Medicaid. They don't have, because some states opt out of offering that. I know it's mind blowing to me that they can, or that they, that they do, because it's federally, funded. But they can go get gender affirming care.
Right.
That's mind blowing to me that people can't see that they're like, it's easier for you to go get hormones and tests and all this other stuff for a minor, but they won't let you have regular care, then that's a red flag to me. Like that, that's like this, there is an agenda. They want this. They're doing this. I mean, I just covered Prisha Mosley. I just covered her case last
she's
night.
Great, yeah.
And her entire lawsuit. And I'm just.
Did you look into the specifics of that?
I looked at like the whole court document and read the whole thing. Yeah, like I was blown away because.
Yeah, it's so whatever you guys are imagining people watching, it is worse. It is so much worse. The specific details.
Oh my gosh, it is so much worse. I mean, the doctors like colluded to go after her.
And I think her surgeon, it was his first case, his first time doing that surgery.
Yeah. And then all these doctors get all kinds of affirmation afterwards. They did this to her. They coerced her. They made her believe that she would grow a penis.
Yeah.
Like, how do you do that to a young lady that is not, that is documented that she was unwell? Yeah. She was unwell, and it was well documented. They falsified paperwork. They falsified it for each other. They colluded together, and they got her to have a radical double mastectomy, and they didn't even label it when she had that surgery in the right way. They
label it as a breast reduction or something?
Yeah, breast reduction surgery. That's not the same thing. That's not what she had. No. And so the whole thing is fraudulent from start to finish. And people are like, oh, well, she made the choice. No, you can't make an informed consent choice, especially when these doctors are colluding all against you. Like, and then after they got her case, then WPATH they all got like the golden seal to be gender affirming. Like, these are doctors that are on the fast track. They did this. And it's mind-blowing to me that this is where we're at, and that they're getting away with this. Like, just blatantly, outright, in the open. And she discovered it after she went through therapy. Like, that's just, it's mind-boggling. Like, I suggest everybody read the actual documents that are, the court documents. The filing. I mean, I was blown away, and she told me, I checked with her before I reported on it. Like, I wanted to make sure that, that the Daily Mail hadn't misrepresented her in any way. And she said there was just like one typo of her age, and she gave me a couple other details that I talked about last night on the show. But I was so blown away that she went through that, and that she testifies, and that she's speaking up Like,
right. She's very strong.
yeah, she is. She is. And I was like, I don't know how you trust anybody. Like, I honestly, like, how do you trust anybody after, you know, being manipulated by so many? Like, that's got to be just, oh, I just feel for the, you know what I mean? Like, if people can listen to that and then still think it's okay to transition a minor, then I think their moral compass is broken. You know, if you can hear her story or any of the detransitioner stories, then and think that it's okay what's going on, then I think your moral compass must be broken, because children shouldn't be going through that. And, you know, her parents were completely sidelined in it. I mean, and you're in California, right?
Yep.
So in California, I saw that they, you know, they've taken children away from their families.
Yeah, they're certainly at minimum attempting to make it so that, you know, if a child gets out here from another state, they can go into some kind of foster care, and the parents are not allowed to like take them back unless they're going to affirm them. And other situations where I think that they were pushing so that a 12-year-old could choose to go to a group home if they wanted to, without establishing that the home life was abusive. And it's just, we live in an era where there are people who comb the internet looking for kids in tough situations, attempting to lure them. And we're creating a situation where those traffickers can lure them and then change every identifying feature about them, including their documents.
Yeah, this is really dangerous. We're in a very, very dangerous territory right now. Right. I mean, and you've been sounding the alarm about this for a while, and I think that that's just, it's incredible. And I know that you must take an incredible amount of backlash talking about it, because I know I do.
Yeah, I've definitely had some very strange experiences with internet people.
Yeah, I'd put it mildly.
I've got stories.
What was that? That's a really good broad term, though. You know, it's kind of ambiguous. Just, you know, internet people. That's excellent.
You gotta watch out for them.
Yeah,
we've encountered some too, man. And people we've worked with and done shows with, and then there's like just stuff that happens, and you're like, wow, okay,
yeah,
that's who you are. Okay, good to know.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's been wild. Like, just
like sometimes there's a misunderstanding. It's good to try to work it out, like give them a chance. But like sometimes it's just like, you thought I was sending you a secret message through a Twitter poll that you're not allowed to learn language. Okay, I won't go into it, but it's kind of a recent drama. Like 5 videos later.
Yeah. I know, and then you have to decide. Like,
I promise, if you think the famous TV person is sending you secret messages through Twitter polls, she's not. I'm not. I promise.
Are you sure you don't have
probably
secret?
More often than not. You know,
you have secret minions somewhere, right? Like, I know you do.
I get accused of that. People seem to think that I'm like more social than I am. Like, I don't understand.
Wait, is there a difficult process to sign up for it to get applied to that minion position?
I do have a Discord, and the difficult process is that you have to deal with the people that are in the Discord. They're mean. It's my Discord, and they're still mean to me.
Oh no!
I'm not at the top of the pyramid ever. Don't worry.
You're not?
No.
That's not fair.
You only listen because I have the right answer. I tried one time expressing a feeling in my Discord to people that I'd been like talking to for years. They all took screenshots, and they still bring it up.
Oh my god!
That is fantastic. They don't.
I mean, I adore them. They're hilarious, but they're a little mean.
They don't need a Discord.
There is a hazing. It will chase people out. Some people cannot handle it.
That's great. Now I want to be a minion.
But they're so funny.
I want to apply.
Yeah, that's like the only requirement, is that you have to be really funny, and you have to be willing to like allow other people to be weird and funny.
Hey, we like that here.
Seems fair. That's kind of how
like,
we run.
Don't talk about your feelings. No one wants to know.
No one wants your feelings.
Or just make up stuff about your feelings that you don't really feel.
Yeah. Talk about someone else. Put your
like-
feelings onto a hypothetical person and then condemn them.
Yes. Shame them immediately.
And then they'll stick up for the other person, and then you can kind of feel validated by proxy. It's fine.
Riley Martian says, I'm an internet person.
Are you an internet person?
It's
Stay away
okay,
from
we
me.
still love you.
Good to see you, Riley.
That's my purse.
That's fantastic.
Oh my god. Oh, Steve, you missed it when she first came on, and I'm like, you have a tiny hat. I'm like, I put my locks up, and like, I look like I have a tiny hat too. We have matching.
All internet people have tiny hats. It's a rule.
It is like,
Hat
see,
sisters of the
When you reach 10 subscribers, the internet sends you a hat. I have one. You have one. Boyce has one.
the voice has one.
Yeah, or as I call them, Mercedes Benz.
We're the traveling sisterhood of the podcast pants or whatever. Hats.
The podcast hats. Yeah, it's like if we ever have to, like, you know, we need a secret like minion code, you know, hats.
That's right. If I put on the pink hat, that means I'm in trouble. Send authorities immediately.
Send
Well, that's
help.
what the dunce cap is for.
Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. So yeah, when I was telling you earlier before we started, when I like first came across your channel, and I'm like, Steve, and I was like deep into trans stuff, and he was just like, it was before he kind of like started like really kind of like understanding how important it really was to talk about. Like he was still kind of like, oh my god, really, like, are we doing this still? Now he's since like come to. Not because I didn't force it on him, he just kind of came around to it. But I was like, oh my gosh, I'm like she works with people who have like pronoun disabilities and stuff like that, and he just like, I can't talk about this. I'm like, no, but I'm not talking about trans stuff like this. Like that completely like intrigued me. So you work with people who now, what exactly, can you explain what that is, like about how you work with people who like, is it a traumatic brain injury that they like,
It can come from a traumatic brain injury. It can also come from a stroke. It can come from other forms of brain problems. Like there's I think Bruce Willis recently was announced a diagnosis with something called primary progressive aphasia. And so that's where you have a loss of language that might be a loss of function words specifically. And that's primary, meaning it wasn't caused by something else. And so it's that in his case, it's a form of dementia. I hope I'm not making that up entirely. I'm pretty sure it's Bruce Willis. If not, I'm sorry.
fact checker, guys, fact checker. Minions.
I'm sorry.
I know you feel like you have to have a
But
disclosure.
Very, I shouldn't laugh. It's very tragic condition. But anyway, it's been in the news. So you have content words, meaning like a word like cat or apple or car. They have content. You can picture what they are very easily. And then you have function words that link the content words together and allow you to draw meaning. And those would be words like prepositions and articles and pronouns. And content words are an infinite category. You can keep adding stuff all the time. Function words don't really change much. They're very, very conserved. Jordan Peterson calls them a closed linguistic category. They don't change much. They very, very slowly and slightly, unless there's some major situation like I think when Russian fishermen started like intermarrying with Alaska natives or Arctic natives, someone up there, I forget which specific group, but it's a historical linguistics example. Instead of attempting to teach their husbands the indigenous case ending system, which was really complicated, they actually adopted the Russian case ending system into their language. And so you kind of got a fusion.
Oh,
so
wow.
That's an example of when you might have a massive change in function words in a language, but it was because of migration. There was social factors for that. Otherwise, it doesn't just happen like that.
Wow.
That's really
because that when she said that, I was like, "What pronoun? What are you?" Because of course it conflates with the.
It sounds like I made it up. I know.
I'm like, what the fuck are you talking about exactly right now?
He like had a meltdown.
Yeah.
Stop my...
Like he just it broke his brain for a minute. Like it was really great. It was really great. And he's just like, oh, like you didn't know what to do with it.
I'm
like
okay. Once I understood,
and then he was like, now I'm interested.
now I have to understand more.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
there's two categories of aphasia, which is an acquired loss of language, and one is fluent aphasias, and that's where when they talk, they still sound like they're making sentences easily, but the content of it doesn't make a lot of sense, and it might go off the rails in terms of like a bunch of tangents, things like that, and that would be a fluent aphasia. So the other kind would be a non-fluent aphasia, and that's where the words that get spoken are the ones that were intended, but it's very halting, and there might be some difficulty getting more than a couple words. They might have say the same word over and over again for everything. And so if you typically issues with function words like that would fall under non-fluent aphasias. So you get something called telegraphic speech, where it sounds like a telegram, where it's just like they'll have a few content words, but all the grammar words will be missing. And it's really interesting. I was one person I worked with at one point, where we had the words written out on pieces of paper. Hypothetically, this is a hypothetical example. I shouldn't frame it as something else, but if you work with such a patient, you may have the words written out, and they're identifying opposites like big and small, left and right, open and closed, and if you may have other opposites like in and out, up and down, and it's they will be able to do the content words but not the function words. So it's not a reading problem. They're able to read, but it's just the file that would be pulled up by the search function of reading just isn't there, and they're not able to sound it out, and it's purely based on what kind of part of speech it is.
Oh wow.
Yeah. So such a person is going to make a lot more errors on function words than on content words, no matter how many years and years of therapy they have.
I wonder if that's why I trip over my words sometimes. So I wonder if there's something that's like a part of it that's, that does that, because I trip over things, like especially if I get tired. If I get tired, then I trip over my words a lot more, and I'll start to stutter and stuff like that. But yeah, it's really interesting. Now, how does that work with like? Now, how are if people can't use like necessarily like the proper pronoun that someone else wants them to use? How does that work for somebody that's out in the world with this environment? You know what I mean? Like
exactly.
It feels like
it's a lot easier to fire them at work. Right. To say that we're not firing you because you're an expensive disabled employee that's a little hard to accommodate. It's because you keep sexually harassing your coworkers, because that's how it's considered now. It's sexual harassment to not be able to do this language task.
Yeah, that's fucking ludicrous.
Yeah, and so what are you going to do at that point? And it's not just aphasia. That's not the only people who have more difficulty with pronouns in particular. There's people with ADHD, people who have had concussion but don't have aphasia, but they just have concussion, so they have issues with attention. People with autism spectrum disorder who have a deficit in social reasoning are going to have more difficulty applying pronouns correctly socially. I mean, they're words that change meaning all the time. When I say me, it means something totally different than when you say me. And so keeping up with that socially is actually quite difficult. The fact that it develops early doesn't mean that it's easy. So autistic kids very, very commonly will have more difficulty using pronouns. And so it's been measured that they have a higher error rate. Older people who are having age-related decline are going to have more difficulty with this task. And it's going to get more difficult the more coworkers have vanity pronouns there are.
Yeah. I mean, I can't even imagine like trying to keep up on this or being like in a retail job, like being a manager in a retail setting somewhere where there is, a higher concentration of it. Because I mean, when I was doing the research, I found that I think it was DC had like the highest number of transgender people. It was like higher than anywhere else in the country. It was almost 3% there. And I was just like, wow. And I talked to people that are, I think you dropped in one of the spaces the other night that Laura was in. Laura, I think she goes by Laura May Sky on Twitter. And she lives in DC, and she said that like, it's just, I mean, she's seeing 10 people a day that she is like clocking, like just seeing them nonstop. Like, and the concentration there is extremely high. Now, do you know what would, what is like, what's making this happen? Like what is making large concentrations of it? Is it just because it is a social contagion? Is it a trend? Is it, what do you think is happening?
I think there's a few reasons. One is that the internet is more and more of a thing, so it's easier to see other people on social media talking about their transitions and think, what, maybe this is my answer too. Maybe this is the thing I need to be doing and reading more about. It's being taught in schools as a possibility, so it's being put into on kids' radar very young. And it is also something where, we just had the pandemic, and we all kind of had a pandemic project, I think. And
oh my gosh,
this
yes,
might be some people's. So
yeah.
I think it's just very much a fad, and that people also evangelize. When you accept gender into your heart, like you want to share that love. You want people to know gender the way that you know gender and be saved by gender.
Yeah, it definitely feels like it's a cult mentality that, that I see. Like it's alarming to me.
Yeah.
That things that like were always just known things, you know what I mean? That there's males and that there's females, and I knew that there was intersex people. Like that was it. And like I didn't like it feels like you're just in a completely different world where all these people who are very loud about it, very, very loud about it. Like if you say something that is even slightly triggers to them, like, I mean, it's like you might be kicking a beehive. You don't know what's happening.
Right. And before you know it, they've made like a bunch of videos where they're just ranting at you. For
I'm sure there's
all the secret messages that were sent by your choice to not like say something you don't believe is true, or you asked a question the wrong way, and this proves that you don't want me to exist.
Yeah, I don't understand that. I'm like, I'm not against
like asking anybody. Them, where would I get content if you didn't exist? What would I be doing with my day?
I know. That's so true.
I don't want you to exist.
I know. I'm like, it's completely like down the rabbit holes with it, and it's just so interesting to me. Like I want to understand it. I don't know that I ever will fully like understand it, but like I can't get enough of it, and I'm like, I don't care. Like you guys want to silence me. You're just gonna make me louder. I'm just gonna cover it more because there is so many layers to this. That like I was saying before, like I think most people looking at out like from the outside, they have a family member that is, or they don't want to like, they don't want to be called a transphobe or a bigot. It will eventually happen to probably everybody here. Might not happen in real life. It might, but most of the time I've ever been called any of these things has always been online, on Twitter usually. That is just it's the debate, like the gender debate is really happening on Twitter. I mean, it's like it is so concentrated in it. Like I'm surprised. Like, and people are like, oh well, it doesn't matter. Why do you care about other people's kids? And I'm like, why do you not care about kids being harmed?
Yeah,
because like I've always stood up for kids. I'm a mom. My daughter's 19, and I've always. Like if I hear the neighborhood kids outside of my apartment, if I hear somebody crying or sounds like they're, you know what I mean? I'll poke my head out there and just look, just because I'm a mom, like, oh, you know what I mean? Does someone need help? Like, it's just a natural instinct to do that. for me, and to protect kids and women's rights. And like, the thing is like, I never had issues with like transsexuals like coming in the bathroom with me. Like, it wasn't until there started to be the self ID got ushered in. And I think that that's the worst part of it, was the self ID, because then you have men with beards that are just putting on a dress and playing the role of a woman and going into women's spaces. And I'm not just talking about just going in the bathroom and going in and just peeing. No, they're doing obscene things, like obscene, like things that if your child or someone that you knew, a female that you knew, was exposed to it, you would be like, oh my gosh, I'm embarrassed for you.
Right.
I mean,
yeah, it's people are getting conned, and the price of this con is that 12-year-old girls that are just starting their period do not have any place in the school where they can go to get away from the boy that knows that she's on her period this week and is going to just follow her every single time, just to listen, just to make comments when the teachers aren't around.
Exactly. Because, and they're putting pads and tampons in the boys' room, and then they're just misusing the products.
Obviously.
What do they expect? Really? Like, have they never seen the toilet paper wads that they throw in the ceiling? I mean, come on.
It's absurd. It's
like, we not know what boys do?
We're not allowed to know true things anymore. That's the name of the game. We're not allowed to know the truth. We have to pretend that we don't know what's actually real.
You have to suspend your disbelief. It's like watching bad movies from the 80s, you know. You have to just pretend it's good screenwriting, and you know,
or just really any like, you know, TV, if you consume
pretty
any
much
of that,
all,
you know,
media
you have to suspend your disbelief.
There was a time, an innocent time where subversive things actually got through to the mainstream sometimes, but I think it was all manipulated from the start. So, you know, in the end, just everybody better get the goddamn pronouns right.
Yeah, just shut up and watch Snow White and the Seven.
That's right.
Magical people in the forest that aren't in any way disabled.
Yeah, and fully realize the fairy tale princess role that you want to play when you become a girl. That's your role model right there, right? Like, you know, you want to be a princess, one of the Disney ones specifically, one of the pretty ones, and then that's like, it seems like every single person I listen to that has transitioned has like some sort of twisted version of that as their ideal for a woman, like what they're basing their trajectory.
What, Disney like, princess?
It's really Disney based, like a lot of different times. And I don't know if it's just because of they're young and that, you know what I mean? They're just kind of coming off the Disney movies and stuff as a kid, or what. I don't know exactly why that is, but it seems like really reoccurring theme every time you're like playing videos or whatever. Like, I hear things constantly. It's weird.
Yeah, I know. He hears in the background, he digests a lot of, like, you know, just the content from just hearing it, and he's just like, oh my god, what just are you
random TikToks, like, what are you talking, what is this person even saying? Like, this is bizarre. Do they think they're, you know, they're the mermaid that lives under the sea, or what? I mean, I don't understand. Like, how are you not you want to be a woman? Don't you want to be a strong, smart, successful woman? Don't you want to be like all those great qualities that you have grown to respect about women, and, you know, all of those things? Like, I don't, maybe I'm just like,
they want to control a woman. That's what
yeah, it's not about trying to
control of a woman that actually has no legal rights relative to them, because it is them.
Yeah, to me, it's like those men are definitely not they're not trying to ascend to become feminine in all the best possible ways of being feminine. You know what I mean?
Well,
it's
the
like
transsexuals are different.
Window. It's like it's totally different. It's not at all the same of what I would think. You know what I mean? Like someone would want to try to be. It's the opposite of that.
Well, it was always the transsexuals just blended in because there were safeguards in place, right? Like when I knew like one person that was a transsexual that went through years of therapy, that had, you know, the diagnosis for a long time, was well into adulthood, you know, and so when I met them and they were transitioning and everything, it's like they had years of therapy. They had, you know, but now it's like teenage groups are going together, like friend groups are scheduling their gender affirming care together to go, but to not affirm the gender that they are, to affirm the gender of the opposite gender. And I'm like, this is just, it's absolutely like, oh my gosh, it's just alarming to know that entire friend groups are going and they're just going in a pack like they like we would go to the mall. I mean, is this and then they compare surgery scars and oh well, what hormones did you get? I mean, I've covered like how, you know, like the Lupron affects women and what they use Lupron for normally, and they're using it off label for kids. And that just doesn't seem to bother anybody. Oh, it's just a pause in puberty. But how do we pause puberty? How do we pause time? I don't know how we do that.
Yeah, you don't.
You can't.
There's no pausing development. There's no pausing metabolism. Any change you make is going to change it. It's like those drawings that spin and you put the color on it. It's like you can change which colors you're putting on it as it's spinning, but it's not, the painting's still going to keep changing as long as you keep interfering with it.
I mean, the brain must develop in different ways if you're on a puberty blocker, right? Because the way that works is it blocks the hormone, right? But your brain is still developing because time is still existing, right? When you're in adolescence.
Yeah, your hypothalamus is supposed to send out this pulsing signal of the gonadotropin releasing hormone. Or gonadotropins, one of the two, but something's supposed to be sent out pulsing. And the GnRH kind of overwhelms that signal so that it stops pulsing. And that pulse rhythm is changing based on time of day, time of year, age, and other factors. So it's a complex rhythm that's being replaced with a dial tone. And that causes there to be a lack of secondary production in the pituitary of follicle stimulating hormone and luteinizing hormone, which do a lot. They don't just mature the gonads. We don't know all the things that they do, but obviously if a hormone is being produced in the brain and then traveling to the gonads, that's a long distance to travel. It's doing other stuff along the way. And we know that dysregulation of those hormones later in life has been implicated as being somehow we know it's poorly understood, but associated with degenerative changes like in dementia. We know that people who have medical conditions like Kalman syndrome that have natural dysregulation of this process are more prone to certain motor disorders. So it's neurologically very significant. And I have a suspicion that goes a long way towards involving sexual response and sexual attraction, independent of anything that's happening actually downstairs. But other stuff is happening downstairs, including that then triggers the gonads to produce sex hormones, which then go back up to the brain and do other stuff in the brain. And all of this is a very complex dance that's just being strangled. And the idea that you can do that and not have an impact, it's absurd.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like puberty is a human right, and puberty needs to be for me, I was never given a choice. You know what I mean? It wasn't a choice. It wasn't like, oh, you know, like, I think we need to normalize, like, you're going to have an awkward phase and you're going to feel weird and your body's going to feel weird and you're going to feel out of place. And we all go through it. And it's a part of like what builds I think it builds our character. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Because that awkward stage is when like kids get picked on and you figure out who you like and who you don't like. Like, so how are these people even like, I mean, I just feel really bad because signing up for a life of never having an orgasm again in your life, that's got to be just, that's got to be horrible. Or lack, you know what I mean? Lack
Yeah.
of being able to have one, have that
Lack of
function
interest,
later on.
lack of arousal, and arousal is not just, it's not just a genital process. Your brain is what is being aroused. Your brain is what is feeling better as you pursue the goal of having a romantic interaction. Like that interest is neurological. There's a reason it onsets at that age. It's not just a strict function of gonads or genitalia development. So it's there. Like I talk about this a lot in the I Am Jazz's Waking Nightmare, which is a reaction video series to the I Am Jazz show.
Yep.
I don't think it's not just because they removed his genitalia with a knife that he doesn't have that kind of response. He didn't have that response even before they removed it.
I just watched one of the ones that you did. I think it was season 8, episode 6 or something. And where she goes out on a date. Where she or he.
They were really trying to marry him off that season.
I feel like, so anyone that doesn't know, I Am Jazz. Now, can you give a little bit of background? Because you know it a lot better. You know a lot more of the details than I do.
Jazz was originally Jaren, a boy that was put on various new shows as a so-called trans child. And starting when he was like 5, I think he was on Barbara Walters. He went on some Australian show, Dr. Drew, things like that. And so then when he hit 11, they put him on puberty blockers. And according to them, immediately after that, when he was 12, he was diagnosed with depression and anxiety for the first time, and had some kind of a mental health like deterioration that then ultimately got so severe that after they removed his genitals and sent him off to Harvard, which happened like 2 months later. I mean, can you imagine being 17, your parents remove your genitals and then pack up your stuff and send you to college?
Jesus.
Who was an adult at 17?
Certainly wasn't. I was definitely not. I don't think I have days that I question. I'm 55. Shit.
Yeah. I refuse to be an adult. I've got cats, and that's the closest I'm ever going to get to the adulthood sort of things that people do, I think.
Well, I spent a lot of time on Grateful Dead tours as a young man, and that was like our little slogan. We're tours are us kids. We don't want to grow up.
Oh, I wonder. I'll DM you later. I had an uncle that did security for them. I wonder if you know him. Yeah. Anyway,
that's awesome.
you guys are about the same age, so that's why I think possible you know him.
It's quite possible.
That's pretty awesome.
I won't dox him though.
That's a whole different cult, the Grateful Dead cult. So
it is.
Let's stay on this.
So I came to know.
Yeah, and we fully have done like
deadheads, right?
We talked about that, like, and other heads don't like it. Like, they do not like us saying that it's a cult. That it's like no, it is. Look at the basics of it.
It doesn't have to have a negative connotation.
Not every cult is negative, but you know what I mean? Like, there could be negative aspects to it. I mean, come on, look at how much tickets are.
Well, there's a thin line between a cult and a fandom.
Absolutely.
So if you're not drinking Kool-Aid yet, if you're not cutting your breasts off, it might just be a fandom.
Yeah. That's true.
And most people spend most of their time right there. You know what I mean? Like checking stuff out from different things that fascinate them. So I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I think that's where you should speculate from. Get up close and see what the hell, you know what I mean? Check it out.
So with Jazz, you were saying, what were you saying? At 11, is that when they started?
Yeah, they put the puberty blocker implant in his arm, and that turned off his development. And he very rapidly developed symptoms that led to multiple mental health diagnoses that, according to them, he didn't have prior to the transition. I've been going back over the first season now, and it's very interesting how Jeanette talks about his supposed like suicidal crises, about how it's always that she was worried that he might be feeling that way. It's never he said I'm suicidal. It's never he made an attempt on his life. That's why we had to do this. It's always he was really withdrawn. I was worried that he might be suicidal.
And
Wow.
okay, so there was one part of the story too that really triggered me when they said that, you know, when his mom, I guess, said that, oh, at 2 years old, he came and said that there was going to be a fairy that was going to, you know.
Yeah, I responded to that because everyone's got a different recollection of what exactly he said, and you can arrange them from more to less believable. So according to Jeanette, the 2-year-old said, "Mommy, when is the good fairy going to come and change my penis into a vagina?" It's like, really?
That's quite the vocabulary.
Yeah, and then Grandma Jackie says that Jazz said, "I a girl, not I want to be a girl. I a girl." It's like, okay, 2-year-old might have said that.
Sure.
And
That sounds more believable than the first thing.
Yeah, and then in the middle, you have the gender therapist, whose version of events, you know, as in it. What did she say? He said, "Mommy, when is the good fairy gonna bring, or when I think the good fairy's gonna bring me a vagina?"
Yeah.
So it's like you're adding speech errors, and you're adding them a little bit out of order for what's developmentally typical. It's possible he had an atypical speech errors that he made at that age, but it's, in my opinion, more plausible that she just doesn't want to get caught. She knows that Jeanette's version is a little bit unlikely, so she got to flesh it out a little bit.
When I heard that, I'm just like, there's no way. There's no way. Even the smartest little kids, like, I don't care. You can, in hindsight, it's really easy to go in reverse and you know, insert things, or, you know what I mean.
And then
or
she had the freaking
manipulate.
giant like Cabbage Patch sex dolls that she held up to him.
What?
It's like, show me on the doll where you want the doctor to touch you.
Oh yes. Oh.
Gnarly.
Oh yeah, she had the big doll things, like, you know, it's
Yeah,
evaluate
the
somebody.
doll with the erect penis. That it was literally like Cabbage Patch dolls. That was the quality of them. It was just like, where did you sew these yourself? Like, where did they come from? I feel like these dolls are actually illegal to possess.
I know, right?
They sent specifically to, you know, some Norwegian country, or you know,
they got
directly from
Norway.
Berlin, from the factory.
Vila Haskilda.
Yes.
Drunkenness is to blame. So it's a proverb.
So at 11 they start the puberty blockers, and so I mean, and the thing that I think a lot of people miss too is that if puberty is when your body parts grow, like everything grows. That's why, like, suddenly, you know, the girls are the weaker and we're not as strong as the boys, and they, you know, we realize, like, oh, we might be in trouble here. So that happens at 11. But then when did they switch Jazz over to the actual hormones?
So they put him on the gonadotropin releasing hormone at 11, and then I think sometime between 12 and 13 they added in the estrogen and the progesterone, and then they concluded the progesterone was causing a lot of the psychiatric symptoms to be worse. So they took him off that, or dramatically reduced it, according to the show, probably because in their reasoning, you know, progesterone is only for isn't doing anything cosmetically. So what's the point of having him on it, just to mimic femaleness? So they took that. Jazz started saying in season 1 that the estrogen was making him want to binge eat. He, of course, in season 8 is over 100 pounds, like, overweight, and they seem to have given up trying to help him diet the way that they were trying to do in season 7. There's something called hypothalamic obesity, and the hypothalamus is, you know, the area of the brain that this drug is acting on. When that area of the brain gets developmentally disrupted, you lose the capacity to regulate your appetite, and you end up overeating. So it's called hypothalamic obesity. Sometimes it can happen naturally, such as in the condition Prader-Willi syndrome, and sometimes it can be acquired, such as through a brain injury, such as perhaps the kind you get from taking a drug that acts on your hypothalamus.
I mean, it's the difference is a lot. And Jazz takes pictures with just, like a sports bra and shorts on, and I mean, he looks like, they could be like 8 months pregnant. I mean, like,
yeah, that's the other thing is he's got a Cushing's body type. There's a condition called Cushing syndrome that's caused by a pituitary tumor, and overproduction of the hormone cortisol that leads to that kind of physique, and difficulty with weight loss. And puberty blockers can also damage the pituitary. There's something called pituitary apoplexy. You can get it on the first shot of puberty blockers. You can have an undiagnosed pituitary adenoma, and it causes your pituitary to die. And you can end up with complications from that. The youngest person I could find in the literature who had that happen was 22. She got it for ovulation-related treatment, for fertility treatments of some sort. I so far have not been able to find a case study of it happening when given for gender reasons to a child. In my opinion, it's a matter of time. It's just a matter of time if it hasn't happened already and just not been published. But your pituitary, of course, makes a lot of other hormones that are very important for your normal functioning, such as antidiuretic hormone, which keeps you from peeing too much. So you can develop a condition called diabetes insipidus if your pituitary is damaged for any reason. So it's just,
I mean, so
very delicate situation upstairs.
Yeah, seems like there's a lot of things that there's a lot of many unknowns that they are just off. I mean, and they're using this off-label.
That's why the FDA slapped the black box, or I don't know if it was a formal black box, but the warning label onto puberty blockers, that they can cause brain swelling and vision loss. Because when you start messing around with things like antidiuretic hormone and screwing with the body's ability to maintain salt and fluid balances, what can happen is that you end up in a situation where your brain is saltier than your blood. And what does water like to do? It likes to go where it's saltier. Mm-hmm. So then it flows into the brain and the brain swells.
Oh my gosh. It's just a complete recipe for a disaster.
Yeah,
like
that's
just
horrible.
Yeah, there was a famous case where this woman did "Don't Wee" for a wee, and so she that created the same situation where she was on a radio show, and so they had to drink water continuously, and the last person to not pee got the game console, and so she ended up dying from that because she created osmotic pressure and her brain swelled and she died.
Jesus.
Jeez.
Yeah, don't deliberately not pee to win a game console is probably not a good idea.
It's like give yourself meningitis.
Yeah, basically.
Yeah.
Yeah, she got a headache and went home, and they found her later. Alcoholics will get that too, and you can have it happen in reverse too and then you can end up with other issues that can be induced by correcting it, where you end up not being able to form new memories. I've encountered a couple of those too. But they'll get dehydrated and be drinking all the time, and then you end up with the opposite situation where fluid gets pulled out of the brain, and then the brain changes to pull the fluids or pull the salts back in, and then they end up in the ER, and the ER tries to like fix the problem, and they fix it too quickly, and that causes a demyelination syndrome. On my gosh! Area. I think it's a Korsakoff's is the result. So then they end up like they can still function socially, they can still like interact with their environment normally, but they cannot form new memories. So you end up with people who are like in a nursing home. They don't know why they're there, and they don't know why no one will take them home. And that's a daily thing.
That's heartbreaking.
Yeah. And it's not like it's getting worse. It's not like it's a dementia necessarily in that way, but it's like this is just your life now. Just wondering why the heck you're here.
So, I mean, this could develop and happen to any number of these kids that are on these drugs as well, then, right? Is over time.
That particular one, I'd have to think about whether that could happen for puberty blockers somehow, but definitely the issue with the brain swelling. Yeah, that's something the FDA has definitely said could happen. So I don't, when it happens in the other direction, it's generally because the fluid is being pulled out, but I probably, honestly.
I mean, I know,
like you get pressure necrosis too, so then that causes other damage. Of course, that's why people die from concussions, is the brain swells.
Yeah,
you get salt released, and fluid balance changes from a concussion that cause the brain to swell from inflammatory processes that pull the water in, and then there's nowhere for it to go. And then it might herniate at the base of the skull. It's not a benign condition.
That's exactly what I was thinking when you said it in the first place. I was like, that seems like the same thing, like having seen how the concussion works and how the transfer of the salts and the liquid coming back to fill up the space where the salts were, and how that causes the swelling on like inside of the brain tissue. And that's why you can't really stop it. They can stop it with medicine, but like you said, it will happen too quickly, and then that person is screwed.
Yeah, and they might not know what's happening because they might not have been fully informed that it might happen.
Right.
Because the person wanted to sell them something.
Yeah.
And so then they might just think, oh, I've got a really bad headache, or I got a migraine, I got this or that, but not knowing that it's actually a medical emergency and they need more significant care. And the ER doctors might not consider that as a possible thing. And before you know it, there's been serious permanent damage.
That's just incredible. And what are the other, like, the testosterone and the estrogen, like, is it just those that they typically put people on for when it's cross-sex hormones? Is it just those? Is it just like,
they will typically
one pill? Or
no, they'll put males will typically also get at least one, like a testosterone blocker, because the estrogen by itself often isn't enough to actually turn off the testicular production of testosterone. So if they still have testicles, then they would be put on an androgen blocker. And then that also can boost the estrogen, because if the testosterone is circulating but there's nothing to attach to, then the male body will aromatize it. I mean, the female body will too, but there's a hormone called, or an enzyme rather, called aromatase that turns testosterone into estrogen, that's made throughout the body, including in the brain.
Wow. So does taking that actually change the brain then and the function? Because I hear that a lot. Like there's that female brain and the male brain, and they feel different when they're on the estrogen and stuff. So does that actually, do you think?
Well, they're not experiencing a female brain. They're still experiencing a male brain on drugs. But there is a male and a female brain. I agree with that.
And so they're experiencing still their male brain, which is side effects of these drugs.
And so I've done a couple literature reviews of fMRI studies that looked at people before and after a few months on these hormone regimens. Mm-hmm. And so the females were being put on testosterone and the males were being put on estrogen and androgen blockers. So it's hard to say exactly what caused it, but they found that the male brains shrank significantly. And they shrank globally, and then certain areas also shrank more relative to other areas, which probably has to do with distribution of receptors and other factors. And they estimated that the rate of shrinkage was about 10 times the rate they would expect of normal aging.
Wow.
Because your brain does shrink as you age. And if it shrinks too much, then you have dementia.
Okay, so is that like kind of like one of the diagnoses for dementia then is something like having your brain shrinks a certain amount? Can they test it that way?
Yeah, like, there's a common finding that I'll see on charts called generalized volume loss. And so the more progressed the dementia is, the more significant the loss. And so that'll, you can look up what it is, but it's like, I think your brain is like supposed to be about 3 pounds, and pretty advanced dementia, the brain might only be 1.5 pounds. Like it really shrinks.
Wow.
Oh, wow. That's a drastic amount.
Yeah. And then the areas in the side also inside get bigger, the ventricles. So it's shrinking in both sides.
So does that shorten their lifespan then as well if their brain is shrinking? Like do our brains naturally
eventually
shrink
dementia kills you because your brain's not able to regulate your bodily processes. Yeah. So if it is possible to die from the dementia directly.
So we might be creating literally a generation of people that are going to have
early onset dementia. Yes, that's what I worry.
Oh my gosh.
As well as the hormonal dysregulation may cause other problems that lead to other forms of dementia, as well as other things like, for instance, ALS happens because your brain is folding proteins locally, and sometimes it can misfold them. and produce a prion-like substance that then just kind of like acts like the chlorofluorocarbons in the ozone layer and just kind of just breaks one neuron after another forever without breaking down itself.
Right.
And so when you're disturbing the metabolism of the brain, that might be making those substances more likely to form.
I had somebody describe that ALS as like growing a razor blade or a laser beam inside your brain that wants to kill other cells. That's its only job, is to
so every time the neuron eats it, the neuron dies, and then it's still there to be.
Yeah, exactly.
It's a monkey wrench. They got thrown into the works.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Yeah, like somebody dropped a razor blade into the the biomechanicals.
I mean, it's just I don't even know how to respond. Like I mean, like, do you know what the numbers are? Like, I know that Miriam Grossman was saying that the numbers are up. Like, people like wanting to go into transgender care and stuff is up, like I think 5,000%.
Yeah,
it's like recently. Do you know like
unreal.
how rapidly are we growing with these numbers?
That estimate sounds like the numbers I've seen where it's up several thousand%, but it's not. I haven't seen one above a 10,000% rise, but there's also like a time lag. So we don't really. I think the numbers I saw were also from like 2020 or 2021, like late pre-pandemic to early pandemic, and we don't necessarily know what the numbers this year look like, but we do know that it's growing exponentially. It's not a linear growth. And we know that we don't know what's going to happen. They just published a study where they looked at they were following 1,000 transitions over a period of 4.5 years, and they found a 30% detransition rate.
Wow.
Which contradicted that other number of 1%, because it's absurd. It's like they're like, oh, it's only a 1% detransition rate. Only 1% people regret it. It's like if the number of transitioners is not stable, the number of detransitioners is not stable either.
Yeah.
I mean, isn't the likelihood of it being about 33% anyway? Because like in everything, you know what I mean? There's pretty much that kind of variable right there. Like you're gonna have this many people on board and this many people not on board.
Why would this group be uniquely like
exactly? Why are they exempt from that?
Insight into what they want to do. Like, are we all just high like on the White House lawn with our shirts off? Like,
everybody's doing Molly.
We're
baby.
doing the booby dance.
Oh, to be young again.
Dance all high on Molly on the fucking.
The Raver to Turf pipeline is real.
Yep.
Oh my gosh. I know. It really. I mean, they come at this from so many different angles. Like, there's so many, like, oh my gosh, it's just. Oh, so someone was asking where you get your information. Like, where do you get your sources, or like, where if someone's interested in starting to research this because it's a lot, where would you point them to start like looking into things? I know that you do videos on it, like you cover it. Besides that, like if they just want to get information that's not from like a mainstream media source, because we know that a lot of the depending on what side of the media you're going to get a slant one way or another. So where would be a good place for people to start if they want to get more information about this?
I speech pathologists, we get a lot of specific training in these in education in a wide variety of conditions, and the field is called speech language pathology because in general pathology refers to studying the causes and effects of diseases. And so we get a lot of like foundational knowledge in anatomy and physiology, and knowing how, like, try to have a good working knowledge of like how it's supposed to work. And then you can start exploring what happens when it breaks down. I spend a lot of time on PubMed, for instance. I'm also a little bit unusual in that I had someone close had a brain injury when I was a kid, and so I watched that aftermath, and so I've spent a long time trying to understand how brain injuries work and how they get from point A to point B. So it can also don't rely on these for medical information, but it can be in terms of exposure to concepts that you can then go actually research on PubMed. You know, like I definitely like medical dramas. Like if sometimes they're correct, sometimes they're not. I'm not saying get information from medical dramas, but if you want exposure to ideas you wouldn't think to Google, that might be new, that you can then go research from reputable sources.
Yeah. I find that it's sometimes it's like I don't even like even with the Daily Mail article, like even though it seemed pretty straightforward, I reached out to Prisha because I'm like, I want to make sure, like, did they get this right? Did they really talk to you? You know, because they can get it wrong and they can get stuff terribly wrong. And I don't want to be part of something that's, you know, spreading something that's not true.
Yeah. So a lot of my role, or a chunk of it, is that I'm trying to understand the actual cause of a person's speech language communication swallowing this or that problem. And then I'm working with them and I'm trying to help make it better. And I'm also trying to help them understand it themselves. So it's there's something that happens when you're actually, you form a theory of how this works. And then you work with different people who all have the same cause and you see different effects that kind of like flesh it out. So finding some way to either like volunteer or otherwise work with people who have complex disabilities may teach you a lot and challenge your assumptions about how you work, how they work. People with the disabilities can, of course, teach you a lot because they need to understand the implications of their difficulties in order to function well and in order to prevent complications. But of course, not every person with such an issue is able to understand it. So, but the ones that are have learned a lot from them. They're the best teachers.
It's amazing. Yeah, I know. I love like just talking to people and figuring things out and getting their experience and just picking their brains about things. I just,
Yeah.
I'm like that forever why kid. You know what I mean? Like I'm just forever curious and I just want to know as much about things as I possibly can with having like, you know, ADHD too. So it kind of goes from here to there to here.
Boredom.
You know, I'm like, I'll be on something for a while and then all of a sudden like a different interest like comes in and it becomes my my target interest, and that's how I've always been. But I go back and forth to the same things. I'll go back and forth to the same core like things that I like to do. So Colt Glass said, we're already creeping so close to falling down replacement level as a planet, plus the 5,000% increase in this. How many of those people remove their ability to also reproduce? Well, unless they are banking it. They if I know some people bank their eggs or their sperm, but if they're not, then they're usually, it's very hard to come back from the hormones. Like a lot of these young ladies are like, I don't know if I can get pregnant ever again, like, or ever, because I don't know if any of them have ever had a pregnancy. And there's something that there's something different when you're a young kid. You know, I knew that I always probably wanted to have kids. Like I just always kind of like, knew I wanted to have a kid or something. I had that maternal like instinct, but I think it's because as a young girl, I had to watch my younger siblings. Like I was 10 and I had my 5 and 2-year-old siblings that I had to watch and I was responsible for. Yeah, like that's insane. I wouldn't do that to a 10-year-old, but it was a different time when I was growing up in the 80s. That was a thing. Like, like, no, you're just responsible for them right now. But like, I don't think that most of these young people have any idea what that maternal clock suddenly can feel like. Because I know I had my daughter when I was 24 and I definitely had that, like, I mean, that internal clock, like that urge to, to have a child was very strong.
Mm-hmm.
And I was told that they didn't even know if I would ever be able to get pregnant or anything like that because I had PCOS. So with the cyst rupturing on my ovaries and everything else, like I was only ever able to have my one daughter, and that was it. And so I'm absolutely, grateful that I was able to, but some of these girls might not ever be able to. They don't know. They don't know if
Right.
they're going to ever be able to have a baby.
Yeah, there was another paper I looked at that had 12 female to male transitioners, and it looked at after they had their hysterectomy and oophorectomy and sliced it up and looked at it under the microscope. And the researchers concluded that the rate of fibroids in the ones who'd been they'd all been on testosterone. That's why they were in the study. But that they had like 58% of them had fibroids, and some very high fraction, if not all of them, had growth of they called it fibrous collagen tissue, which is essentially scar tissue in my interpretation. And so it's just on the ovary itself. So it's as well as changes to the endometrium that they said are normally only found in endometrial cancer, which would be that their endometriums were producing aromatase, and normally endometriums don't do that. It's one of the places on the body that should not be making aromatase, and it only does if it's cancerous. So, and testosterone's a known human carcinogen.
Yeah, that's something that I don't hear from a lot of people. I don't hear that it's a carcinogen. Like nobody really. I don't think that people are aware and have complete knowledge about what these side effects of all these drugs are, and that they're taking, and and you're taking high doses of it, like extremely high.
Right. And then they'll try to be like, well, are you saying that men should suppress their testosterone? And it's like, no, I'm not.
Their bodies have been built that way from the time, you know what I mean? Our bodies are amazing. Like, it's really amazing how our bodies function, how we fight off disease, how we fight off sickness, how our immune system works. Like, it's
and
really
the SRY gene,
fascinating.
For instance, the SRY gene does things in various organs throughout the lifespan. So it seems logical to me that when you have a chemical like testosterone that's evolution has been assuming is going to be there for a very long time, and you have genetics that evolved assuming testosterone is going to be there for a very long time, that perhaps instead of there being like that you have more than one difference, and maybe the other differences, the genetic differences between men and women, are in part to counteract the difference that comes from our differing female biology and differing male biology. So no, I don't at all accept that just because estrogen is a carcinogen, it's equally dangerous for men and women. That's just not how anything works. It's supposed to be in my body. It's not supposed to be in yours at that level.
Yeah, I mean, and that's like, I feel like we have like, Dr. Frankenstein deciding these things for people, and then expressing care for these people and expressing that we're like concerned. You get called, one of the names, you're a bigot, a transphobe, or oh my gosh, they've questioned whether I'm part of the LGB. I'm like, really? Like, do I need references now to prove it? Like, do you need pictures? Like, why? Like, and these are people that I personally knew, that suddenly didn't like what I was saying, and then suddenly questioned whether I was legitimately part, you know what I mean? If I was legitimately part of it, because I would be like, listen, I'm part of this community. I've been part of this community for a long time. I don't agree with the rest of this stuff. They attached their wagon to us, and that's not what we stand for. Like, I don't stand for all this 100 so on genders and doing all this. I don't. It's just that's not about my sexuality. My sexuality is something I don't have to take hormones or do anything to. It just is what it is. It's just the way that I am. And so, like, there's a big difference between that and the people that identify as animals. Like, that's not the same thing at all.
Right. It's like, I mean, we think that we've gone full moron right now with the trying to change your sex. Imagine the nightmare medical treatments that are going to come about if we actually let people start transitioning to animals.
Oh my gosh.
Just take a moment.
Oh my gosh. Like, what
I want
are
to be
we
a mermaid,
doing?
damn it. Where's my tilapia skin fins?
Oh my gosh.
If
Can
you
you
could make a
imagine?
tilapia vaginoplasty, you could make a tilapia tail. It's less
They're-
difficult.
Did you leave the toddler with the tilapia toddler in the pool again? Go
Well, if I've already installed gills, if I'm given it gender affirming gills, what's the problem?
She's been underwater for 15 minutes. She's fine.
I mean, even the surgeries that they're doing now, I've looked up pictures of them. I haven't exposed Steve to them because I think that, it would make him sick. But like some of the pictures of these surgeries that they're doing to people, if you're brave, look it up. You don't even have to know how to spell
Snuffleupagus. That's the
Yeah.
one you should look up on my Odyssey, Exulansic.com. Snuffleupagus.
Oh,
Just go to the content.
Oh gosh.
There's
But prepare
there's two.
yourself.
There's the Snuffleupagus one, which is like a tentacle dick coming out of someone's stomach. And then there's also the video where I react to watching a nullification surgery, which is where someone's penis gets removed and they sew it up in its little hole.
Talk about your bird.
Why
That's
why
I don't know why
are
I'm like
they
this. I don't
doing
know.
that?
I'm just like this.
Why are they doing that? Why are they doing nullification surgery? Like what?
Some people
Why?
are eunuch gender. They identify as eunuchs, and you need to transition them from male to eunuch. Did you know that the Bible mentions eunuch gender? That proves that it's real.
Oh, there's the justification.
That's what they say. That's literally, there's TikToks about it. People dressed up like pastors.
What?
Yeah. They had a huge influence on the Standards of Care 8 for WPATH. There's this thing called the Eunuch Archives, according to Genevieve Gluck, who
Oh
did
my
the legwork
gosh.
with Redux.
I just had a whole weird flashback of like Frank Zappa singing St. Alfonso's Pancake Breakfast to a bunch of eunuchs, and like the whole theme somehow it has something to do with pancake breakfast. I don't know.
Oh gosh.
Sorry. Distracted for a second there.
And
Someone
another
in your comments is going to give everybody a half pint of whole plant extract. I'm in favor.
Absolutely. That's what I'm trying to do.
what happened?
I said I would feel successful if I could
it's
successfully give everyone I love and care about a half a pint of whole plant extract. That way, all the rest of their life, or at least for a really good long time, at least till I'm not here anymore, they would have this like amazing thing. And if they were struck with cancers and endometriosis and lung cancer and brain cancer and all these things, this stuff is proven to eliminate those and actually, cure things that don't. It doesn't make any sense why it works, but it absolutely fucking does. And I would feel like that. I would feel like I'd done something productive.
Yeah, that would be amazing to be able to do.
Besides playing music for people and stuff, that's my other
my other favorite plant is milk thistle root, which is the only known antidote to certain kinds of mushroom poisonings and other poisonings. Basically, if it's going to fuck up your liver, you probably want some.
Yep.
Tylenol overdose, for instance, it'll keep you from dying from that.
The mycology aspect of things is really fascinating too. I'm really into that. But but definitely, I just think that's like an attainable goal. Like I could probably pull that off. Because I love to grow
goals.
weed.
It's good to have goals.
Yeah.
Weed goals are good. Weed goals are good.
Weed goals
could be worse.
Yeah. I mean, absolutely.
That's a t-shirt.
What's a t-shirt?
Weed goals are good.
Weed goals are good. Yes. Watch, there'll be a t-shirt later. Redbubble wouldn't let me have a shirt that said turf on it.
I had the same problem with Custom Ink.
Oh, really?
They banned my account and then also deleted all the female shirt sales records. So if the shirt was a woman's shirt, the sales records got deleted. The men's shirt records did not get deleted. It was very much a message.
Wow.
So
well, I haven't got any specifics back on it, any feedback yet, but I reckon if they're gonna do it like that, then That's pretty messed up.
Yeah, we'll figure out a way around it.
Oh yeah, there's a workaround for sure. We
I
can just
was-
do them from here.
I was so excited though. I was like, oh,
Well, I mean,
God.
I know it, at least one turf-friendly producer or
Sweet.
shirt
Oh,
person.
Ooh,
She's
cool.
in the
Yeah.
UK, so it might be a little far. But and she's a smaller producer, but she does my official shirt. And then I also use a Shopify, but I haven't tried printing turf, anything that says turf on it with them.
I mean, we didn't make up the name. It was applied to us.
That's true.
That's the thing. It was applied to us. It's an adopted term because it was given to us by the trans rights activists.
Yeah.
I mean, like TERF is not like, you know, like they want to make it like a thing, but you know, they put that label on us and then they're like, oh no, we can't, you can't embrace that label. No, how dare you now?
No, we said feel bad.
Yeah. You can't feel good about this. You can't adopt this. You can't like laugh. And if you
No
laugh,
community
they're
for
just,
you.
yeah, you know, then the minions come. You know, like then you kick the wrong like hornet's nest or whatever, then you can really get a whole lot of them. But like, you know, most of the time I'm just like, yeah, but that's not reality, and this is why. And some of the answers and responses that I get, I'm just like, what? Like, I don't even know what they're saying. Like, it just doesn't compute. Like, it doesn't come across as actually like part of our language. I'm like, I don't understand this, and I'm not trying to be mean or, you know, or rude to them. I honestly just don't get it. And if you don't have understanding of it, then they're coming. They will let you know. There's also another aspect of this that I like. You before you said that people that were autistic have a hard time using the non-gender pronouns, right? Like the
Pronouns in general.
Yeah,
including first and second person. Well, I guess we don't have the second person one so much in English, but because it's all this. But just they'll substitute it in every direction. So I've worked with like or I'm aware of for an example case. It was a 4-year-olds, and they could tell you the names of all 50 states and all the 50 state capitals and the 50 state capital like official birds and all this information that was linked together that didn't change. It was purely content, but they couldn't say throw the ball to me. They would say throw the ball to you when they meant throw the ball to me, and vice versa. And it was just really that task, that social language task was very confusing. They didn't know how to use pronouns correctly because the words change meaning all the time based on who's speaking. So it requires a mental model of the social world, and that's the autism impairment. Is they don't form that in the same way, or if they do, it's either way too simple or way too complex, or some combination of being both simple and complex in the wrong ways. Wow! So it's good luck, good luck, kid. Try not to get bullied.
I know. Oh my gosh. And I feel like kids are more sensitive. Like kids are just more sensitive than they ever have been before. Like I was talking to we went on a walk. It was like probably like a month ago. Wasn't the last time we were on a walk, but it was a walk. And I ran into you know, one of the neighborhood dads and stuff like that. And I just was talking to him, and I'm like, I grew up in the 80s and the 90s, and you know, it was be home before the lights are on, and you know, like you fended for yourself, and you know, like, and I feel like now there's just kids are just a bunch of like just wussy. Like they're not like overly sensitive, very thin skinned, like they can't take anything. Like it's like even kids that it's not even, it used to be that like it was more of the upper, you know, the upper class, or like, you know what I mean? Like the more upper the class that you were, the higher up in class that you were, like as a kid, it was like you were more like a snowflake or whatever. But now it feels like even like the lower classes of people, like the poor people, are also like the kids aren't tough like they used to be. Like they used to be thicker skinned. They used to have like more just, you know,
less resiliency because they're not tried. They have no stresses. You know what I mean? Like as soon as there's something that's uncomfortable for a child, these parents like rush to them to try to protect them and and try to just deflect all of life's social lessons and stuff. Like
yeah, like everyone
like
gets a trophy.
Yeah, it feels like the kids don't reach certain milestones that we had as younger people, like certain things that you were faced with, like just it's so different. It's so vastly different now. They're just protected, like
yeah, they're like, that's like the boy in the bubble type of deal. It's like they're just so sheltered and protected, and they don't have the same grit. They just don't have that same, like, I don't know. They wouldn't have survived growing up in earlier generations. Like it was just completely different. But back to the autism thing. I find that there's a lot of kids that are autistic that are getting entrapped to the gender ideology.
Right.
But they also have a hard time with the language. So I'm wondering how that's working. Like because a lot of them are getting stuck in using the wrong language and being very like tight about that, like just very, no, it is this way, you have to accept people this way, and it somehow like trumps their natural instinct or whatever that we normally have. Like how is that working? Like it's very confusing to me.
I mean, there's definitely a big double standard where you can get away with being sacrilegious if you're considered a member in good standing. Like you can say things, whereas if you were labeled a TERF and you said that, no, everyone would know to descend and to beat it out of you in some way. So that was a very weird experience for me because when I was in school, I switched to grad school. So I started going to a graduate program where that was very unrelated to gender. And it was in a different city around a bunch of people that didn't care about gender. And it's not that they had a problem with people who were gender diverse or gender expansive. They didn't have a problem with the fact that I was a gender special. They just didn't care, but they still did care about me. So it was a very strange like feeling of like, wait, you don't care about this at all. There's no social reinforcement for talking about this. This is so weird. But you still want to hang out. I don't get it. You're still politely waiting for your turn to talk. What is this? This is the opposite of my Discord experience.
I know, right?
How dare you be civil? Uncalled for.
Like you.
And then I would come home and I started like I just didn't cut my hair as much because I was busy and I wanted to like. There's someone else in my family that grew their hair out for school and didn't cut it till they finished. I was like, I'm going to do that too. And that's what I did. But as soon as like my hair kind of got to like femme length, like they started to just re-educate me if I started saying stuff that was like stuff I'd already been saying. Like they were, my opinions didn't change, but like the hair length made them know that I was one of them. I need remediation, including from people that I brought into the group.
Oh
I brought
my
into the
god!
ideology.
Wow.
It's like, oh, you don't actually like. We don't have a special connection. We were just both relying on visual cues to know that we were in group versus out group. Okay, I see how this worked.
Oh my gosh.
Enjoy your mastectomy, lady.
That's wow.
Sir, not lady. Oh God. Every time you misgender someone, gender Jesus kills a person by suicide.
Gender Jesus kills a person. Oh man, is that?
So you should tell us a little bit about the churches, okay? Because we need to get into this. You guys have to check out her channel. It cracks me up. Oh my gosh! So
I want to know more about gender Jesus because that's right.
He's holy. He gender manifests in all sorts of ways. Sometimes he manifests on toes. Sometimes he manifests in statues. Sometimes he manifests on windows.
A dog butt. I saw a dog butt the other day. That was.
If you perceive gender somewhere, that's gender Jesus manifesting.
So when you get gender Jesus manifested, does that mean that you like immediately sprout the genitalia?
You grow a penis.
You grow a penis immediately.
Yeah, that's just what happens.
What if you already have one?
It shrinks.
I wonder if there's shit. I wonder if there's a way to get that to happen to helicopters or just drones in general, and then we can make our own doncopters.
Yeah,
I have a video called my gender identity is attack helicopter, and it's a trans man with a phalloplasty that she spins around.
No,
that is fantastic.
As a helicopter. I'm like, do not tell me I can't be an attack helicopter gender person.
Did you see the story of the New Mexico? I think it was the governor race or mayoral race. I can't remember. It was the mayoral race. Maybe it was mayor of Albuquerque.
Mm-hmm.
And
somebody was protesting.
Somebody was protesting, and they had a little drone that had a giant rainbow-colored dildo on it, and it was like nicknamed the Doncopter from then on. So like, I'm just trying to manifest that. I think there needs to be more of those in politics.
We need doncopters. Can you just imagine? And it was hilarious because
Jesus would approve.
I think maybe we need a gender Jesus like butt plug instead. Like then they could all have the gender Jesus.
I'm not sure.
What about it like a side plug?
Fully.
Because he had the
side plug.
He had the vaginoplasty they gave him with the spear.
Oh my God. I've seen some really bad ones where it's like really off center. Like, how do you get it that off center? How do you do that?
I don't
it's
know.
really
That's
remarkable. It's like it just doesn't look good. They're like, no, it's fine. This is exactly what I wanted. This is what I asked for. No, it's not. No, I'm sorry.
No, and they are
like
they're all shaped weird. They are like fat in the middle. Like it's like a little middle.
Have you seen the one with the no nips, the no nip nops?
Oh my God.
You got like two camps, and one call themselves the nippies, and the other was call themselves the nip nops. And the people who get nippies, they get like they'll have the nipples removed, the nipples replaced. Those are people who have nippies, and so they'll like put cream on their nippies and all that. And then the people that get their nipples like totally removed permanently and not put back on, they tend to call them nip nops. And so I say that the nippies have been at war with the nip nops for generations, and based on who has more nipples, I would say that the nippies are winning.
Oh my gosh.
That's fascinating.
Oh my gosh.
That might appeal to our friend Oz in Australia there. He was talking about arbitrary nipples and superfluous ones. So
well, they'll buy like pretend nipples to stick back on afterwards too.
Oh my gosh. I mean,
a DIY nipple.
So I'm pretty sure there's tattoo artists that will tattoo a nipple back on. But usually it was because a woman had to have, for cancer purposes, she had a double mastectomy or something. It wasn't ever like for kids that decided, I want my body parts gone.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Like It was a specific, you know what I mean? Like having geez. And
it's like their reasoning for a lot of them anyway, to forego the nip nops is that they, men have nipples and women have nipples, and I'm a non-binary person. So the answer is no nipples.
I had a person.
It's kind of logical.
I guess it's sure. Is that a natural progression, or
I had
have you watched Pink Floyd the Wall too many times? Seen Bob Geldof shaving.
Oh, have you seen what's it called? Is it called The Tower or The Fall? The one where the two girls climb up a tower and like get stuck up there.
Yeah. I remember that too. What is that? That one's fucked up.
Yeah, that was a very disturbing movie. Needed more gender, more trans.
Gender
I
Jesus, where are you?
Gender Jesus. Gender Jesus. Is it like if we say it in the mirror 3 times, you know what I mean? Like gender
You'll
Jesus.
Grow a penis out of your forehead.
Oh my gosh. I know.
Sometimes some of the internet people that have come for me, like they'll get trolled by people and they'll decide that they're me, and I'll find out about these threads later, and like they'll just be like calling them like Exulansic, we know that's you. I'm not Beetlejuice.
I know, right? Is it like Beetlejuice if we say gender Jesus 3 times, he comes?
Hey, take it easy, Riley Martian. Good to see you.
That's
good
why they
night,
need to,
Riley.
like, I made a video where it was like, I didn't know that the women's bathroom was the house from Beetlejuice. And so if they're outside of the women's bathroom, they stop existing. Like, they got to watch out for the sandworms. That's why they're so desperate to get in there.
Right? Can you blame them? Jeez.
You don't want sand in your neovagina. Andrea Dworkin warned us.
Oh my gosh, I can't even imagine. Like,
I just think of Kyle and Cartman.
like the thing
That's too
is
much.
that even if you take this isn't like against anybody, but like if you look at these surgeries that people are doing, I don't think that having a bottom surgery is a good idea for anybody. I honestly do not
don't
think
think
it's
so
a good
either.
idea for anybody to be doing that. The complications that they're
Some
doing to
things,
people.
wanting it is a sign that you don't understand it well enough, or you're not mentally well enough to get it. Like, the mere fact that you want it is a bad red flag.
Yeah,
There
that's
shouldn't be
that's
like
a
an
red
informed
flag.
consent process for cannibalizing someone, for instance.
Yeah.
Like, outside of severe, like, well, I mean, okay, Donner Party, sure. All right. Maybe sometimes cannibalism is the right answer. I take that back.
Maybe sometimes, but very infrequently. I would
Very
argue.
frequently.
But I mean,
But
these
it's always a
surgeries,
result of foreplanning.
That's right.
you lose sexual function, like and what they do for a male that wants to have a neo vagina, they literally they cut it and they invert it, and where does the space even come from? How do they even create a space for that canal to be? Like, where on a man's body do you guys just have a hole? Because like we naturally have a hole. Like,
Have I showed you my side plug?
you have a side plug.
Sorry. Couldn't resist.
But I mean, like, if you look at what they're actually doing to people with these surgeries, a lot of people are having them, and then they realize, like, males especially, once they have their testicles removed, they realize, like, oh,
That was a poor career choice.
that was my entire sex drive.
Yeah.
That's what was giving me the drive. That's what gave me the desire to do what I'm doing. And I mean,
See
then
my cat. My cat is going nuts.
yes,
Get in.
Rupert, come here. Come say hi. Come be famous. Come
can
here.
be famous.
He's like, I want to scratch the scratching post. Come here.
Oh my gosh.
Say hi. Let me squeak.
I love the matching markings on the paws, like on the arm.
No, he's got little heart arms.
He
They forms a heart.
does. Oh my
Those are the reasons I
gosh.
kept him.
Oh yeah.
You're never going to believe this. Leo has a heart on his chin.
He's so big.
Is. How much does he weigh?
Like 18 pounds, and
That's how big our
they
cat
say he's
is.
not fat. When I
Yeah.
see normal cats now, it really weirds me out because I feel like their paws, tail, and heads are just too small. They're not in proportion to the rest of their body when they're like otherwise big cat. Oh, that's not a cat.
No, this is Leo.
Okay, I thought you were. I
Look up.
really thought that you
We
said
have
that
a
you had a
cat,
cat. I
too.
was very
We're-
confused.
we're
I was like,
just
somebody
testing.
lied to you.
No, he has a heart.
This is the new
Oh.
cat. This is a trans cat. Used to be a dog.
Yeah.
I know. Oh my
It
gosh,
identifies as a cat.
I said that what's gonna happen too.
He
Everett,
identifies as a cat.
come here. Everett.
Can you hear him purring? Maybe
Get
later.
the AC going. I can't.
A little bit.
Okay, here. All right, you had your turn. Your time in the sun. J.K. Growling, come here. Come here. All right, this is the other famous cat.
Yeah, no.
Wow.
Here's Everett.
He's a cat.
Okay, that is a confirmed cat.
Yes. That is a non-dog.
He's big. He's 18 pounds too.
That's a non-dog creature.
Oh.
So this cat's J.K. Growling.
Nice.
That's so great. They always look like they're pissed off at us, don't
I know. She looks so mad.
they? Everett does the same thing. He always looks like he's mad, like in pictures or I put him on camera.
Excuse me,
Yeah.
stink eye.
Oh my god. Does
She's
she have
a
the
burp-
pretty
she's a burp
eyes?
cat.
Oh, yeah.
Does she have the green eyes?
Yeah, she's got really pretty green eyes. She's very,
Everett's are
very
like
pretty
that-
face. But she had a run in with a dog, so now she's got a skull injury, so she's got like a dent in her head.
Oh no. Poor
Yeah.
thing.
She got messed up.
Oh.
Oh, but she's a good kitty. We love her. But now she makes poor life choices, and it frustrates me sometimes.
Well,
But I forgive her. Also, she can't bite or scratch, so all she can do is growl. So she growls all the time for no reason. And he was like, we both know you're not going to do anything. And she doesn't seem to understand that my feet are an extension of me. And she doesn't like feet for some reason. Like I got her when she was like 5. Or yeah, I was about that old. Although she's Rupert's sibling. She was the neighbor's cat for a while. But yeah, so I'll just wake up in the night because she'll be growling at my feet and hissing at them. And it's like, move.
Is her
I'm not the one being rude.
Is her eyesight okay? She might be going a little blind, like, what the hell? What the hell's that? And it's just your foot under the covers.
I used to think that maybe, I mean, she's always been like this, and she's not that old.
She's got a tube,
she was just she wasn't, once she started growling, like there's something wonky in her head, so she's not sure who's growling at that point, so she growls just in
like,
case.
What did you say? I didn't say nothing. What did you say?
She thinks your feet are growling at her.
Yeah, no, there's another cat somewhere, and it looks like
just having an argument with your feet.
But it's herself that she hears, so she's not sure what's happening.
God, she used to for somehow like I can't have earplugs in the house anymore because she craves them, like foam earplugs. She will hunt them down and eat them, and then puke them up.
Oh no!
And it happened like multiple times.
Yeah, they're not digestible.
Oh no!
No, they're not. I don't even know how she swallows them. Like
I know that is a weird.
I don't know why you would keep eating it after the first time. Like, why can't you form conditioning?
Like, smell like ears.
I know what is. Ew!
Right?
I don't think they're even the dirty. Like, I didn't even know where she was getting.
She's like
stash. She's
ordered
them off for construction workers down the street, bringing them home.
You find construction workers
like I had a camping backpack, so I had a few in a pocket there, and so she was like getting them out of that every so often whenever she had a hankering. And it's like they were like bright orange too, so it's like, why? It doesn't taste like food. It's unpleasant shortly after.
Right.
Okay, you know what Everett's thing is?
Chewy. It's like cat gum.
He likes Hall's cough drop. Not to eat it though, but he would actually open my daughter's little pouch, like with a zipper, and steal her Hall's cough drop and carry it around and like just like come up to you and just drop it out of his mouth.
Drop it at your
like
feet.
He would just
be like, I got one.
And then he would like bat it around like it was his toy. I'm like, this is so disgusting. Like Halls, after they get sticky, and you know what I mean. But he kept stealing them, and we caught him stealing them. Like, I'm like, how does he keep getting these stupid things? You need to put them away. And she's like, I am, and I'm thinking she's just being an irresponsible teenager. But the cat we caught him opening her pouch to get them out.
Cat burglar.
He is. He's a cat burglar. He's an asshole. But we love him so much. He's our asshole cat. But
well, this has been awesome fun.
Yeah, this is definitely.
This,
Rupert, you're being rude. Oh Lord, he coming.
So, tell us about the church, though. The churches.
The churches. Oh, okay.
Yes,
so
I don't want to leave anyone hanging because.
Yeah, I've tried to create a taxonomy of the different sects because I got tired of like thinking I understood it and then finding out that someone else believes something totally different. And I feel like you should know what sect you're arguing with so that you don't like say things that make them think, oh, stupid TERF doesn't understand my special gender ideas. Like, so you have like the Bain split between the original like trans idea, that there's two sexes and then two genders. And so the sexes are male and female and the genders are man and woman. And so sometimes your gender can be different from your sex, but it's flipped. It's not like that's as complicated as it gets. So the point of transitioning is to go from looking like one gender that's based on what sex you are to looking like the other gender that's not the sex you are.
Right.
And so everything involving transition goes from point A to point B. So the other group would be the non-binitarians, I call them, or the Church of the Non-Binaries. So you have for the Church of the Non-Binaries, their goal of transition is to go not from male to female, but from male to not male.
Right.
So and then
how are you just not something? Like how does that?
I'm something different. I'm not like other girls, but I'm not like guys either. I'm just different and special.
Entirely different.
Pick me.
yeah, like it just doesn't make any sense to me, and it
All right,
doesn't.
let her continue though, because this is where it's starting to get good.
I know, I'm confused.
Yeah.
I'm feel like I'm perpetually just always confused when
So-
it comes to this topic.
Within non-binitarianism, there's another split, and there's one group that I call the United Church of the Internal Congruence, and so their goal in transitioning is to look more like themselves. They're not trying to look more like a female or more like a male. They're trying to not look like what they are, and they are trying to look more like whatever their like character sketch of themselves is.
Right.
So they might use they them because they have an idea that there's a third gender, and there's a term they them resonance, and just this idea that like, okay, we're a third gender, we're different from the other two genders, but people who are in the third gender are like each other in some way. There's some similarities, some overlap. And so that's the group that's going to cut off their nipples to be different from men and women.
Right.
Okay.
So
It'd
is
be not when.
yeah, not men and not women.
Right.
There's something else. There's some third thing, but they want to look like how they feel. So they keep changing themselves until they look in the mirror and they kind of resonate and think that this is how I want to look. They want your expectations of them to line up with their behavior. They want things to just kind of overall be congruent.
Mm-hmm.
And then the other group in that is called I call it the discipleship of the disaffected. And so these are non-binitarians who want you to know that they're very different from men, they're very different from women, and they're very different from other non-binary people. Don't judge, don't make assumptions. You don't know anything about me.
Oh,
so
They're like double different.
Yeah, and so that's going to be the group that has like 70 genders, and the neopronoun users, the bug self people. And then also in that group, you're also going to have like I haven't decided. They're either in that group or they're their own group. There's the other faction in this area is the dissociative identity people.
Yeah.
Oh, like DID.
Yeah. So
Yeah,
I have
know
a video
somebody-
that's probably going to premiere tomorrow on that. And
Ooh,
nice.
I
but
might
they're
be
the people,
watching.
they're they thems, not because they're a third like gender, but because they're literally multiple people. So that's why they prefer they them.
Right.
Is because they want
at least grammatically that makes more sense to my brain.
I need a map. Like I need a map or
Yeah, there
a
needs
chart.
to be an intuitive chart that outlines this. And
I'm so bad at graphic design. Someone needs to help me. I made an
Steve
attempt.
does them.
It was an
Steve
attempt.
does them.
It's god awful.
We can do
Steve
this.
does that.
I
Oh my
deleted it.
gosh.
I can send you my chart. Maybe you can fix it. Like I don't understand how to make things pretty if I'm not drawing something that exists.
Oh my gosh. Yes.
Absolutely.
Oh my
Pretty
gosh.
plus
that would be-
information doesn't work. But I consider the DID people to be like pretty much like the least likely to transition unless they're like very ill. Sometimes they'll medically transition because one of their headmates takes over and needs to transition, and they have some elaborate conversation. But you know, those are people who will say like only some of the alters want to transition, the other ones don't, and I'm not the original one. I'm a proxy and blah blah blah. And so it's like there's some
How do
serious
they keep
consent
track
issues
of
here.
it?
If you're telling me that I'm a different person than the person that used to be here, or
Right.
whatever.
That's amazing. Like I would love to try to put that data into a graphic
Yeah.
for you. That would be fun.
Yeah, definitely. He can make he does all the graphic stuff.
And then
'cause-
also under Trans Classic, you have a group I call the Our Lady of the Perpetual Hormone Replacement Therapy. And they're specifically defined by having the belief that there's some medical biological reason that they need to be on the cross-sex hormones.
Oh,
It's a
right.
Like that they
biological
actually have a
reason?
female brain in some way,
It's
and their female
Magdalena
brain leads
related.
female hormones.
Yes. Okay.
okay.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
Sure.
And then there's another group also within Trans Classic that would be I've termed it like the Church of the Immaculate Conception. I always go back and forth about that title, but I haven't thought of a better one. But like, and then that's the group where their idea is that if you have gender dysphoria, that is a sign that you have a disorder of sexual development, that you should try to like figure out what it is. And that somehow having a DSD causes the gender dysphoria, even if you've never been diagnosed with a DSD, and it's completely occult.
So is that where the AGP, the autogynephilia?
But yeah, AGPs would also be in Trans Classic.
Okay, so they would be there.
Yeah.
And
I
those
think
are the
that,
people that
they
were.
have like a biological evolved, like I think that there's just an evolved tendency among males to want to mimic females sometimes as a mating strategy. And I believe that people come up with like elaborate nonsense explanations about why they want to do something when they don't understand why they want to actually do it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That seems very, very likely. And
so I disagree with Blanchard's theory that sexual orientation is relevant when you have a male who's engaging in compulsive female mimicry. I don't think it matters what their sexual orientation is. I don't think that makes them different.
No, that's probably accurate as
Or
hell.
if it does, it's a downstream difference.
Right.
It's not
Yeah. Yeah,
there's
there's
autogynephilia should obviously, I think, apply to any male that's compulsively female mimicking.
Yeah, and that includes the men who are, are suddenly taking these hormones and breastfeeding babies.
Which that also a lot of those regimens began in attempts to allow males who had the sort of sexual development to have these female experiences. That's kind of where we got the idea that it's a good idea and safe.
That's hella creepy.
It's
So
really
you can find
creepy.
it on PubMed articles about that, where they might have only been able to induce it for a month, but it's like it was worth it because it allowed this adult male human to have an experience.
His fucking fetish. That's
well, I mean, if you're gonna do that, then and you want to pump that and do that in the privacy of your own home and not share with me and not share it with a child, then
Sure.
do you
Go for it.
like have fun.
Go to the White House. I support you.
Get a baby doll that does the fake drinking or something.
Yeah, sure.
I don't care. I don't
They have a
care.
lactation room at work. Don't involve a baby.
Just don't involve a real baby. That's my thing about it. Like that's like people act like, oh, well, you're against, you know what I mean? You're against the, kids at drag. It's not sexual. And I'm like, no, I'm against the kids seeing things that are not appropriate. I don't care about drag shows. Drag shows are absolutely fun. I've helped put on
lived
drag
across the
king
street from a
shows.
drag bar. I've been to a ton of drag shows.
I enjoy that. But if there was a kid there, it would ruin it.
It's definitely an adult situation. It's an adult performance.
Yeah, it would ruin it for me if there was a kid there. I wouldn't feel the same. I wouldn't behave in the same way with a kid there. You know what I mean? Like, there's like the situations where I saw them.
I'm just thinking about like Chuck E. Cheese, and they have an animatronic mouse that has like a dildo attached.
Yeah, like I was. Oh no, that would
super inappropriate.
It just not. They don't go together. There's a line.
That was the
thing. That I'm all for fetish and whatever you want to do, just not in front of the kids. Like
that was the entire.
That just makes it weird.
The entire problem with all of those stories that we were, like this one with the fireworks. Yeah, it's not artillery. Don't worry. At least not yet.
I made a joke that the 4th of July was PTSD Awareness Day.
Right.
It is. I swear. Afterwards, it's gotten me a couple times. Jesus.
But hearing these stories and stuff, they got this drag show at the public library and all these little kids and stuff. It's like, how did adults arrive at the decision that, hey, this is perfectly fine? And I understand the argument that that sort of thing could be perfectly fine if the people in it were behaving appropriately in front of the kids, and it wasn't a big deal because the man was dressed as a woman or the woman was dressed as a man. Like that doesn't matter, you know what I mean, on its face. But when they're acting in risque ways, it's just, that's the gross part. Like how do you justify like, oh, that's fine though, because these kids are it's kids
traumatic to figure out that the reason the adult is doing something is because they're getting off on watching your reaction. Like that's actually a traumatic experience for a child.
Somebody's getting off on it.
And that's the point of it, is because they want to expose children to this when they're young, because they know it damages you in a particular way. Same reason that they want to give kids porn and give them access to that, the pornographic books, and they know that will seed the next generation with their pathology.
Yep.
It's a very twisted idea. That
sounds totally reasonable to me. Like that's absolutely the agenda.
And people
that's how,
claim it's innocent.
right.
But
Well, that's what I mean. People there's like just
It's
that
not.
little
all
tiny
know it's
bit
not.
of wiggle room.
You don't need to be a sex clown. If you want to have an
Yes.
innocent interaction with a child, regular clown is an option.
Right.
It's
Right. You don't
disturbing
have to
enough,
be a
but
sex
regular
monster.
clown we can all tolerate. Sex clown, no.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Sex
I
clown
feel like
stays
it
at home.
messes with their own, you know what I mean, when you're doing that too, and kids are exposed to that, you're programming them for a later in life to not only accept that kind of, you know what I mean, to accept that, to be more
Yeah.
open to
Of course-
things.
of course
It
you
puts
are.
them on a path, but I think it also messes with their natural instinct, right? Because we have a natural instinct to be able to identify a person of the opposite gender of us. That's like a natural instinct. That's why
Right.
we've been able to reproduce. You know what I mean? Otherwise, you know, like it is a natural instinct for animals and, you know, mammals to be able to identify the opposite sex and have attraction to them.
And it's not just a function of testosterone. The Y chromosome causes proportion differences, growth differences throughout the human body, and every dimension of everything. So it's like your brain picks up, you machine learn that there's two broad categories.
And I'm sure if you're exposed to that as a kid, it does something that we might not even understand all of, like how that programming, how it changes in our instincts and how it's going to change like the next generation of these kids when they grow up. Are they going to be, you know, more, how does it, you know what I mean? How is it going to affect them? You know, and we know that things are passed through genetics, right? Like trauma can be passed through
Generation.
Yeah,
generational-
epigenetic changes.
Yeah.
Which
So,
is why it's
what is
likely-
that going to do?
Yeah,
You know,
it just can completely sabotage a child to expose them to inappropriate sexual content at a particular critical developmental window. It's just not a nice thing to do. They know that it's not a nice thing to do, but their goal is to that's how they reproduce as fetishists, is by exposing children to their fetish,
Right.
as well as
they-
also preying on adults that are vulnerable
They're just
and
breeding
talking them into it.
all this. They're breeding like more predators and more people in that with that same mindset.
yeah, they're
that same-
shifting. They're shifting the way that people
without
are.
the critical thought against the inappropriateness. It's like, well, it's not inappropriate. It's innocent. And then, you know,
Mhm.
Well, a friend of ours, Devin, always says, you know,
Idiots.
then they should go take the drag. If they want to do entertainment so bad, they should have the drag queens going to nursing homes, go to these people that have dementia and
Right.
go there and entertain them.
I'm sure
would
they'd love it.
They would
Right.
love you to
It-
read them a book or
it'd
go
just be
and
fun.
be
Yeah.
fun and flirt with them.
And they're
Steve
adults. So
Steve
come
used to
on.
do it all the time. We used before, you know, the pandemic and everything. He volunteered at nursing homes and stuff, and went and did music and played music for them.
Yeah.
And they loved
There's
it.
plenty of people that they could be exposing their fetish to that are consenting adults.
Yes.
They want to
Yeah.
expose children for a reason. They want to implant the idea of themselves in the child's mind and induce a sort of dissociative like experience as the child tries to contemplate what the hell just happened. This is a weird thing. And then otherwise trying to expose them to make them more comfortable with this guide. You know, it's like Jeffrey Marsh being like, I want to talk to the kids.
Oh,
If you
yeah.
see a man
God.
like me wearing makeup, go up and just, you know, just touch him. Just tell him he's lovely. Be
Ew.
kind.
Yeah, like go on, join my Patreon so you can DM me privately, a grown man. Like, so you as a child can I can talk to you privately and we can DM and I can tell you how to go no contact with your family and it's fine and we'll love bomb you and it's just
No contact is very toxic. I mean,
it's-
sometimes
yeah.
you need a break from people. I'm not saying never take breaks from people, but as an ideology, it's the fact that people on the internet are encouraging it to strangers. It's not good.
No, it's not. They're breaking everything that, like, you know, like everything that like was instilled in me as a kid. You know what I mean? You don't talk to strangers. You don't, you know, you like all of these like critical thinking skills and you pay attention to your environment and you don't do all these things, you know, and it wiped it out. Like they're wiping out any critical thought from people. Like they're making it where their guard is down and their instincts are off And, like we're poisoned by our food, our air, our water, our medicine, the indoctrination of school, like it's coming at us from everywhere. And then our entertainment is also poison to us, and it's one big cycle of the same thing. And it's like, if we don't break this cycle, then we're going to be doomed. We're all just going to be completely like the dodos, like we're just going to walk off the edge of the cliff, and that's going to be it. Because
stay ahead and whatchamacallits.
Yepex has a question here. How would you talk to someone who is a part of the cult ideology with that triangle pride flag and everything without ruining the relationship? Oh,
I said lovingly.
Yeah, my position on that is that, when people are, you got like broadly 4 kinds of cult members. You got people that don't want to leave, they're fine with it. You have the people that are getting ready to leave in secret. You have the people that are going to just announce they're leaving the minute they decide to leave, and then just leave directly, openly. And then you have the people that are trying to change the cult to make it something they could stay in because they don't want to leave, but they're getting ready to leave. And in my opinion, only that 4th one is worth talking to, because the declarative leavers are not going to want to talk to you openly until they're ready to declare, and by then they're ready to leave. The secretive leavers are also going to pretend that they're against you, so it's just going to be a fight. The people that are fine with it are just going to fight. And it's only the people that are like sincerely outgrowing the cult that are might engage with you to try to learn, and you could have a mutually respectful conversation. So you have to have some discernment about what kind of cult member you're talking to, and whether it's worth your time and worth the risk to the relationship to try to directly engage it. And that can take practice. And so you might want to start with people that you don't care about and having those conversations.
Yeah,
but they're out there.
I call a lot of people. There are people, and there are people that like you'll talk to, and then later on they'll reveal that they have a family member. They have like, they'll be like, oh yeah, my cousin or my brother, or, somebody in their family, or they themselves are part of it, So even if you're talking to somebody that's like not really in it, engaged all the way, but they kind of have like one foot in the door with it because they have somebody else that they're close to that's in that. So
Right.
like there's kind of like a outer bubble of like the cult by proxy, like kind of thing, I guess. Like they know somebody that's in the cult. They know somebody that's really involved with it. And so to not be called like, transphobic or whatever, they go along with what the talking points are from within the internal, the internal part of that cult. Like, I feel like, because you'll hear the language, but you'll pick up on like the intensity of it, how they're talking about it. As you talk to more people too, you'll notice like you can kind of gauge the intensity when they start to say certain things, where they're going to kind of go with it, if they twist your words or they don't twist your words, if they're genuinely curious. People that are genuinely curious, I think, are more open to, to understanding it.
Establishing premises, being aware of how rapidly you guys are taking turns is really important. So like if you feel that they're trying to race you in that sense, like you will fall eventually. So it's just recognize that that's a strategy. And so actually taking longer deliberately to construct a response, just to pause. And you have to understand that they probably have also been bullied by other people in the cult, and that's how they got to be the way that they are. So you can think about how to manipulate social pragmatics in order to help them emotionally regulate for the conversation, and yourself. You need to regulate yourself. Otherwise you'll get flustered and get mad, and that doesn't help. Then they feel like they won.
Yeah. Taking the time, I think, to really think out your response, and you don't have to be like rapid fire back to them.
Yeah.
You don't owe anybody a response like right away. Yeah. You don't owe them that. You can think about it. You can like write it, see if that feels right. say it out loud sometimes, like try to get your tone and, like get your full context and think it through before you have to, you don't owe anybody your time to do research. You don't owe anybody your time to, a swift, right away response just because they responded to you. Like I tell
I've
people,
had
like,
internet people where it's like they're very surprised that like I'm willing to go back and forth with a lot of people, but there's something about the discernment just said this person just really feels entitled to fight with me. Do you feel? And some people, that is their strategy, is that they want to take up your time, stress you out, and drain you. And
Yep.
and they actually genuinely think that that's something they have a right to do, and that you don't have a right to not fight with them. It's a little unwell in terms of the mental model of how things work, but it's something I definitely there's a certain people out there who are like that, and
Yeah.
you have a right to say no to a conversation. And if someone's not letting you say no to the conversation, then it's a non-consensual interaction. And that's not okay. Just because they disagree with you doesn't mean that you need to keep talking to them.
Yeah. And what does it matter if they block you and talk about you from behind a block? Yeah. Like,
oh, that's that. Yeah. I always wonder like why people are like, oh, how dare you?
I'm just like, whatever.
I have a right to defend myself. No.
Well, you can talk about yourself from over there. Like, you're good. Like, I'm not restricting your speech just because I'm saying I don't want to see it. I don't want to see your speech. Doesn't mean I'm stopping you from doing your speech. Do you. You do you. I just don't want to see it. And that's the difference. Like, because I'm like not about censorship at all, but I'm like, if you're really like, if you're being a genuine, like, usually it's somebody that I know that like suddenly turns her back and just acts like a freaking complete psycho. I'll block them back. Like, if they block me, I'll block them back and just be like, fine, whatever, we're done. We're neutral territory now. Just leave me alone. I'll leave you alone. Just like move on. Okay. Like if
it is possible
I'm a very
to
reasonable person, like, like I can talk to people that like I have patience for people and try to talk to people that I don't get along with and that I agree very little with, and people that I agree with a lot with. Like I like having those conversations. I remember it used to be really cool to have kind of like discourse, like authentic discourse with people and talk to people that you don't agree with 100% of the time. I don't remind people, I'm like, I don't agree with Steve, who I choose to be with every day 100% of the time. Okay. So if you're agreeing with someone 100% of the time, then it's likely that you're in an echo chamber. You're in a cult. That is a cult. If you can't talk outside of a certain thing and you get smeared because you do, then that's they're hurting you. They're gaslighting you. They're not really your friends if they're behaving that way.
Yeah, I think when you have a friend like YepX was, started off that with a question about how to go about having this kind of conversation with someone who is already bought into the entire narrative that everybody is, calling you a turf about. I think you have to be pragmatic and you have to choose which hills you're going to die on, and just as long as you're doing it with love and kindness and and patience, I think if it's someone that you love and care about and they love and care about you, you guys are going to be able to figure it out. It may take a long time.
Ask questions,
but
ask them questions, present them questions, and have them answer those questions if they will, because sometimes they'll just flat out refuse. But you can ask questions like, why do you, if they're pro surgery for children, well, why do you think that it's okay to sterilize children? Or what's, like, have you done any research into the side effects of these medications? Have you looked into, just ask questions that are in good faith questions and that also the answers to, and that you can get something that they'll possibly accept if they want documentation. But you don't owe anybody. No one can give you homework online. Okay, like when they're like, yeah, you owe me sources now or something. Like, no, these are great. These are some great keywords to use to find this source, and search it in the way that you want to receive, the way that you believe it, and then search it for it in the opposite. If you're pro this thing, then search in the pro of it and search in the con of it then too. Like, if you want to really know about this topic, if you really are curious, then you'll look at it from all directions that you possibly can, or else you're not really getting a really, a really good point of view on what you're talking about or what you're covering. It's not easy, I don't think, for everybody. I think that you can have like that really like physical like response to something, like when you like see something you don't like, you're like, ugh, like, or talking to someone that you don't like or whatever. You can have a physical like just disgust that comes out, but we have to get over that and talk to people beyond that. Oh, is the kitty back? Oh my goodness.
Yes. Such a good kitty.
Fluffy.
He's so big.
He is. The fluffiness makes him big too. Like, he's fluffy. Oh, yeah. Does he have like? Do you think he has like Maine Coon in his bloodline?
Oh yeah, definitely. Look how big his paws are.
Yeah, Everett's are huge too. They're like they probably weigh the same amount.
Giant face. He's like 3.5 feet long.
Yeah, Everett can jump. Steve, how tall are you? Like what? 5'10"? Yeah, 5'10". He's a little bit sensitive about how this. He's not taller. Okay, it's all right. He's not 6 feet tall. He's very like that upsets him. But the cat can jump up on his shoulder from the floor, just like no problem. Just doop right up on his shoulder. It's ridiculous.
He's a good cat. And
he's so long. Like, I'm 5'3", and the cat will stretch and he'll like put his paws like on my butt. I'm like, yeah, he's so long, but he's stocky. He's short. Is your cat short too, or is he long?
No, he's big in every dimension. He's a giant cat. He's a bobcat.
Yeah. We have a friend who has a full-blooded Maine Coon, and he's
all
huge.
over me now. I need to brush you.
Oh my gosh, this has been such a fun episode. I love this.
Yeah, thank you so much. We really went over our estimate, I think.
Oh yeah.
Good kitty.
I know we do long streams here. It's fun.
It's good. I can link back to it, and my subscribers will be happy that there's new content of some sort.
Yay! Well, where can everybody that doesn't know you, where can they find your work? We can put everything. We'll link everything below in the show notes and everything too.
Okay, great. So I'm on YouTube at Xisle, like a store aisle, like EX_AISLE. At the moment, I've got a couple other secret channels too that are backups, but that's the main one. And then it's technically somebody else's channel, so it's a long story. But it's mystery channel. Anyway, I also have Odyssey that at Exulansic.com points there, and the Odyssey will you can see content early with a membership. You can also the YouTube has a membership option, and then there's I'm on Rumble. Rumble doesn't have memberships yet. So stuff goes up there when it goes up for free on YouTube, which is shortly after, like usually a week or so after it goes up for pay. And then there's, where else am I? Substack. And of course I'm on Twitter and Facebooks, all the platforms.
Yeah, you search your name and you can find Exulansic. You can find like just all kinds of podcasts and find her everywhere. It's great. I love it.
Yeah, I had a non-binary name that I made up, which is Exulansic, taking because it's from Exulansis, which came from a book, and so it was a neologism from a recent book, and then I made it an adjective, and so
Nice.
pretty much every reference to it points back at me.
That seems to be the standard. Just change the language. Just that's what we do now. We make up new stuff, make up new words.
All right. Well, thank you, everybody. Hang on right there for me for a minute, and we'll say goodnight to everybody else. Hit that like button wherever you're watching the content. We'll see you guys later.
All right.
Good night.
Good night.